Just as Clara went over to the couple to grab the Tupperware, something unexpected happened. George suddenly collapsed, falling right out of his chair. Everyone turned to look at him. He was clutching his stomach, clearly in a lot of pain. "What's wrong with you?" someone asked. George groaned and said something that surprised me. "I just had a little bite of something from the kitchen. Why is my stomach acting up all of a sudden?" "Wait, did you eat that?" Clara blurted out sharply, making me glance at her. "Oh, right, let me introduce myself. My name is Anna. I'm 20 years old and a newlywed housewife. My husband, Ryan, and I got married last year. We're the same age, so we share similar values and interests. We get along really well and are just as happy now as we were before we started dating. But when we got married, there was one thing that worried me a little. When Ryan and I went to visit his parents to give them our wedding greetings, I noticed something about Clara, my mother-in-law. She's very traditional. When you two get married, you'll live here with us, right?" Clara asked, as if it was the obvious thing to do. Ryan and I exchanged glances, then said together, "What?" We hadn't even considered that. My husband immediately spoke up. "No, we're planning to live on our own, just the two of us." Clara frowned. "What? But you're the eldest son." Ryan and I didn't know what to say. We felt awkward. Luckily, George stepped in. "That's old-fashioned thinking," he said. "Let Ryan and Anna live how they want." That seemed to calm Clara down for the moment, but another issue quickly came up. Ryan and I had decided not to have a wedding ceremony. "We don't want anything too elaborate," we said. Instead, we wanted to save them money for traveling and other experiences. When we told his parents about this, Clara's face turned pale again. "What do you mean you're not having a wedding?" As I mentioned, Clara is very traditional. She was completely against the idea of skipping the ceremony. "How can we explain to the family that the eldest son isn't having a proper wedding?" she said, clearly upset. To Clara, being the eldest son meant Ryan had to follow certain traditions, and skipping the wedding just didn't fit her expectations. Thankfully, George stepped in to support us again. "None of the relatives care much about the wedding," George told us. "They just see it as a chance to enjoy a nice meal. A few months later, they'll forget there wasn't a wedding. So, if you don't want one, that's fine." George was understanding and respected our decision. Thanks to him, we didn't have to follow Clara's old-fashioned expectations. Though Clara wasn't thrilled, we got married without a wedding and started our life together in our own place. I became a housewife to support Ryan, and honestly, I loved it. Taking care of the house, making lunch, and cooking dinner for my husband brought me so much happiness. I even looked forward to the idea of having kids someday, imagining how much fun it would be. About 2 months after we got married, Ryan's parents invited us over. Given our previous disagreements with Clara, both Ryan and I were a bit hesitant, but since we hadn't visited them since the wedding, we figured it was time to go. I prepared myself for Clara to give me a hard time, but to my surprise, she didn't. Instead, she was warm and kind. "If you ever need help with housework or cooking, just let me know," she offered. "I've got tons of recipes, and I'll teach you everything I've learned." Clara loved to cook and told us about how she often hosted parties for her neighbors, which she claimed were always a big hit. That day, she made us a home-cooked meal, and it was incredible, delicious, and full of flavor. Both Clara and George were so kind during the visit that all my worries melted away. Ryan felt the same way. "It won't hurt to visit them every now and then," he said as we left. 3 months later, his parents invited us back, this time for a dinner party at their house. Since our last visit had gone so well, we happily agreed. When we arrived, Clara surprised us again. She had prepared dishes that looked like they belonged in a fancy restaurant. Even Ryan was impressed. "Wow, Mom, you're getting so good at cooking. You never made food like this when I was growing up. This is amazing." "Thank you for preparing all these amazing dishes," I said with a smile. Clara beamed with joy and told me to eat as much as I liked. The evening was pleasant, but later that night, I started having severe stomach pains. As I sat in the bathroom, feeling worse by the second, I began to feel faint. "Anna, are you okay?" I heard Ryan's voice, but it quickly faded. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed. Ryan had called an ambulance and brought me here. The doctor said they couldn't figure out what caused it. It wasn't food poisoning, they assured me. The only thing I could think of was the pasta I had for lunch. It might have had too much olive oil. Still, we never found out the real cause. After receiving in 4 and getting some rest, I felt better. Ryan and I went home, but I couldn't shake the nagging question, what just happened? For a while, I was fine, until 2 months later, the same thing happened again. I felt sick out of nowhere, and just like before, it happened after eating at Clara and George's house. Could the food have gone bad? I wondered, but Ryan, who had eaten the same dishes, was perfectly fine. Then, about a month later, it happened again, another stomachache after dinner at my in-laws' house. Frustrated, I invited my friend Lily over for lunch to talk about it. Do you think it's stress? She suggested. Her question made me pause. I thought I'd been relaxed and open-minded about my relationship with Clara, but maybe I wasn't. Perhaps, deep down, I was more anxious around her than I realized. Ryan was also worried. We should avoid visiting my parents' house for a while, he said. This only happens when we eat there. It has to be connected to my mom's cooking. I wonder if that's true, I replied, unsure. After that, Clara invited us for dinner several times, but Ryan politely declined, wanting to protect me. However, a few weeks later, we received an invitation we couldn't turn down. It was for Ryan's brother, Eric, and his wife's wedding greeting. I felt nervous since I'd been feeling much better by not visiting my in-laws. You don't have to eat much, Ryan reassured me, just take it easy. When the day arrived, Clara greeted me warmly, and everything seemed fine. As long as we were just talking, I felt completely normal. Maybe it really is something in the food, I thought to myself. Eric and his wife soon arrived, and we all enjoyed a pleasant conversation. Meanwhile, Clara was busy in the kitchen, expertly preparing dish after dish. As the table filled with beautiful, delicious-looking food, I couldn't help but admire her cooking skills, but the lingering question remained, why did I keep getting sick? Once we sat down, Clara looked at me and smiled. Anna, you said you liked this dish, didn't you? I made it especially good today, please try some, she said, offering me a plate. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Ryan stepped in. Anna isn't feeling well today, let her decide what she wants to eat. But Clara gently insisted, well, this small portion should be okay, right? She placed a small plate in front of me. Before I could respond, Eric spoke up. Anna, if you're not feeling well, don't force yourself to eat. You've already greeted us, so if you need to go home and rest, that's completely fine. It turned out Ryan had told Eric and his wife about everything that had been happening. It seemed like they were trying to help me. Clara must have realized she couldn't force me to eat her food. Well, I'll pack it in a Tupperware for you to take home, she said. I couldn't understand why she was so eager for me to eat it, but I figured that if I took it home, I wouldn't have to eat it right away. Okay, thank you, I said. Just as Clara walked over to get the Tupperware, George suddenly collapsed, falling out of his chair. We all froze and stared at him. He was clutching his stomach, clearly in pain. What's wrong with you? Someone asked. He hadn't even touched his food yet. What's going on? I thought. Then, George said something that shocked us. I just had a little bit of food from the kitchen. Why is my stomach hurting so badly? Did you eat some of that? Clara asked, her voice tense. I couldn't ignore the way she asked. Ryan quickly called an ambulance. Clara went with George to the hospital, and we were left standing there, still stunned. But I couldn't stop thinking about what Clara had said earlier. It seemed like my brother-in-law's wife had overheard too. We all wondered if there was something wrong with the food. So, we decided to check out the kitchen where Clara had been cooking, and that's when we discovered something strange. We drove straight to the hospital where George had been taken. As soon as we arrived and made it to his room, we heard voices inside. The doctor was asking Clara if she had any idea what had caused George's condition. Clara replied, I have no idea. We walked in, and Clara looked flustered when she saw us. Oh, you came all the way here? It's okay, as long as I'm here, everything will be fine, she said. But we weren't about to let this go. I need to talk to you, I said, stepping toward her. Ryan, Eric, and his wife followed me. What is going on with you two? George seemed to be doing a little better, and his color had returned to normal. But the doctor still couldn't figure out what was wrong. Apparently, George had stayed conscious for a while after arriving at the hospital. After going to the bathroom several times, George became dehydrated and completely lost consciousness. I looked Clara in the eye, pulled something out of my bag, and showed it to her. When she saw it, her face went pale. "Do you recognize this?" I asked. "Well, what is it?" she said, trying to act like she didn't know. "This is a laxative," I said firmly. I don't know why there was so much powdered laxative in the kitchen. Clara went silent. Then the doctor spoke up. "It looks like he had these symptoms from ingesting a lot of loxa leaves. We'll do some tests to confirm. By the way, if loxa leaves are found, I'll need to ask him when he ate them. If he doesn't know, it means someone intentionally gave them to him, and that could lead to a charge of injury." Clara's face went white. "No, it's not like that. I didn't try to make him eat that food, it was just negligence," she stammered. Ryan stepped in. "Then who were you trying to feed it to?" It's not," Clara trailed off. "If you're not going to tell us, we'll call the police and have them investigate," Ryan said firmly. "Okay, I got it," Clara finally said, and then she confessed. "It was all for Anna," she admitted. "I was going to punish her by feeding her loxa leaf meals." "What do you mean, punish me? What did I do to you?" I asked, shocked. "Because my son married you, he's become a bad son. You didn't live with us, and you didn't have a wedding. You persuaded him to do all of that. That's why you're my enemy." "That's completely unfair," I shot back. "Ryan and I made those decisions together." "Is that why you've been putting loxa leaves in the food you've been serving me?" I asked. "It wasn't a lot of loxa leaves before, that's why you've been fine." "Don't be ridiculous. I've even been rushed to the emergency room. How can you say it wasn't a lot?" Ryan and Eric both spoke up in my defense, pointing fingers at Clara. "I can't forgive you for doing that to Anna," Ryan shouted. "I'd be furious too if my future wife were treated like this," Eric added. Both of them declared that they were disowning their mother. Clara started to shrink back, begging them not to say such things. Then, George, who had been listening halfway through, spoke up. He seemed to have woken up just in time to hear everything. "You've done something terrible out of your own selfishness," George said. "You should be arrested by the police. I'm so disappointed in you." "Even you're saying that? You're not going to divorce me, are you?" Clara asked, her voice full of panic. "That's not enough," George replied. "You're going to pay Anna $30,000, and you'll have to work for it. I won't be helping you at all." "Oh no, that's impossible. I've been a stay-at-home mom my whole life." "Shut up. If you don't accept these terms, I'll divorce you immediately and turn you over to the police," George said firmly. "What?" Clara had no choice but to work hard and pay me the $30,000. Now, she's working a lot, paying me little by little. George is watching over her to make sure she doesn't cheat. All her salary is going toward repaying me. She seems exhausted, but I think she deserves it because of everything she did to me. Meanwhile, Ryan and I are living happily. George and Ryan told me that I don't need to see Clara again, and I feel so much better now. I've been through a lot, but with Ryan and George by my side, I know I'll be okay no matter what happens. Feeding someone food with loxa leaves is a crime, right? Isn't it a little much for a mother-in-law to do something like that without hesitation? I still don't understand why George married someone like Clara. But Ryan and Eric seem like good people. Maybe Clara was decent once too. I don't know the full story, but the punishment for Clara seems fair. I hope she works hard and pays me the $30,000. And I hope Ryan and I live happily ever after.
The scent of Ethan's cologne lingered on the silk scarf I found tucked between the seats of his car. It wasn't mine. My heart raced as I clutched the damning evidence, my world tilting on its axis. "Catalina? What are you doing out here?" Ethan's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway of our modest bungalow, silhouetted against the warm light spilling from inside. I quickly shoved the scarf into my pocket, plastering on a smile. "Just grabbing my phone charger, honey. Thought I left it in the car." Ethan's brow furrowed. "In this weather? It's freezing out here." I shrugged, trying to keep my voice steady. "You know me, always forgetful." As I brushed past him into the house, the scent of his cologne mingled with something else. Perfume, perhaps? My stomach churned. Ethan called from the living room. "Don't forget, we've got that industry party tomorrow night. It's important for my career." I gritted my teeth. Another night of playing the doting wife while Ethan schmoozed with producers and directors. Of course, dear, I wouldn't miss it. The phone rang, shattering the tense silence. I answered, grateful for the distraction. "Catalina? It's Aunt Madeline." "Aunt Maddie? How are you?" I'm fine, dear, but I'm worried about you. Are you sure everything's all right with Ethan? I glanced towards the living room, lowering my voice. Everything's fine, Aunt Maddie. Why do you ask? She sighed. Call it a hunch. You know I've never quite trusted that man. And after what happened with your cousin Riley... Ethan isn't like that, I snapped, more harshly than I intended. He loves me. If you say so, dear. Just be careful, all right? After hanging up, I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Aunt Madeline's words echoed in my head, mingling with the memory of that silk scarf. Who was that? Ethan appeared in the hallway, startling me again. Just Aunt Madeline, I replied, forcing a smile. Checking in. Ethan's eyes narrowed. She still doesn't approve of me, does she? I shook my head. She's just protective. You know how family can be. He snorted. Yeah, well, maybe if they saw how hard I'm working to provide for us, they'd change their tune. The words stung. I'd given up my own theater career to support Ethan's acting dreams. Now, with his star finally rising, it felt like he was slipping away. Speaking of work, Ethan continued, I've got an early meeting tomorrow. I'm heading to bed. As he turned away, I blurted out, Ethan, wait, we need to talk. He paused, looking annoyed. Can't it wait? I'm tired. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I found something in your car. His expression changed, a flicker of panic crossing his face before settling into practiced nonchalance. Oh, what's that? I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the silky fabric. This was it, the moment of truth. But as I looked at Ethan, his handsome face etched with fatigue and stress, I faltered. It's nothing, I mumbled, withdrawing my empty hand. Just some old scripts. I'll sort through them tomorrow. Ethan's shoulders relaxed visibly. Great. Good night, Cat. As he disappeared upstairs, I sank onto the couch, the scarf burning a hole in my pocket. What was I doing? Why couldn't I confront him? The truth was, I was scared of losing everything I'd sacrificed for, scared of admitting that maybe, just maybe, Aunt Madeline and the rest of my family had been right all along. But as I sat there in the darkened living room, a new emotion began to simmer beneath the fear and doubt. Anger. How dare he betray me like this? How dare he take advantage of my love and support? I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over Aunt Madeline's number. No, I couldn't call her. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed a plan. Tomorrow night's party suddenly took on a new significance. If Ethan thought he could play me for a fool, he was in for a rude awakening. It was time to take control of my own story. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my dress for the industry party. The silk scarf I'd found in Ethan's car lay on the dresser, a constant reminder of my suspicions. As I applied my lipstick, memories of our early days flooded back. Cat, you ready? Ethan called from downstairs. We can't be late. Coming, I replied, grabbing my clutch and heading down. Ethan whistled appreciatively. You look stunning, babe. For a moment, I saw the man I fell in love with, charming, attentive, full of dreams. But the illusion shattered as he checked his phone, frowning. Everything okay? I asked. He nodded distractedly. Just some last-minute script changes. Let's go. The party was in full swing when we arrived. Ethan immediately dove into the crowd, leaving me alone at the bar. I ordered a glass of wine, watching him work the room. Well, if it isn't Catalina Morgan, a familiar voice said behind me. I turned to see Philip, my old theater colleague. Phil, what are you doing here? He grinned. I'm producing now. Heard about a hot new actor named Ethan Morgan and had to check him out. Didn't realize he was your husband. I forced a smile. Small world, huh? Philip's eyes narrowed. You okay, Cat? You seem... off. Before I could respond, Ethan appeared, slipping an arm around my waist. There you are, darling. Oh, hello, I'm Ethan Morgan. Philip Reeves, Phil replied, shaking Ethan's hand. I was just catching up with Cat here. We used to work together in theater. Ethan's grip on my waist tightened. Is that so? Cat never mentioned you. The tension was palpable. I cleared my throat. Phil was just telling me about his producing work. Right, Phil said, his gaze flicking between us. Actually, Ethan, I'd love to chat about a project I'm developing. Got a minute? As they walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I mingled half-heartedly, keeping an eye on Ethan and Phil. Their conversation seemed intense, with lots of gesturing and hushed tones. An hour later, Ethan found me again, his eyes bright with excitement. Cat, you won't believe this. Philip's offered me the lead in his new film. My stomach dropped. That's great, honey. When does it start? We begin pre-production next month. It's a 6-month shoot in Vancouver. Vancouver. 6 months. The room started to spin. Kat, you okay? Ethan's voice sounded distant. I nodded weakly. Just need some air. I stumbled onto the balcony, gulping in the cool night air. This couldn't be happening. Just as I was starting to suspect Ethan's infidelity, he lands a role that'll take him away for months. Catalina. It was Philip. What's going on? I turned to him, tears threatening to spill. Nothing. Everything's fine. He sighed. Come on, Kat. I know you better than that. Is it the role? Because if you're not comfortable with Ethan taking it. No, I interrupted. It's not that. It's just. I hesitated, then made a decision. Phil, can I trust you? His expression softened. Of course. Taking a deep breath, I told him everything. My suspicions, the scarf, the late nights, and secretive phone calls. As I spoke, Phil's face grew increasingly concerned. Kat, I'm so sorry, he said when I finished. But listen, maybe this film is a good thing. It'll give you some space to figure things out. I nodded, wiping my eyes. You're right. Thanks, Phil. As we headed back inside, I spotted Ethan deep in conversation with a stunning redhead. Their body language was unmistakable. Heads close together, her hand on his arm, his eyes locked on hers. Fury rose in my chest. How dare he? Here, in public, where anyone could see. Phil followed my gaze. Oh, that's Amanda. She's playing opposite Ethan in the film. In that moment, everything crystallized. I knew what I had to do. Phil, I said, my voice steady. I think I'd like to come to Vancouver, after all, as your assistant. His eyebrows shot up. Are you sure? I nodded, my eyes never leaving Ethan and Amanda. Absolutely. It's time I got back into the business. As we rejoined the party, a plan began to form in my mind. Ethan thought he could have it all. The career, the adoring wife, and his little affairs on the side. Well, he was in for a rude awakening. Vancouver wouldn't know what hit it. Vancouver's skyline glittered outside my hotel window, a far cry from our modest bungalow back home. I'd been here for 2 weeks, watching Ethan's star rise with each passing day, and with it his ego. Kat, have you seen my lucky cufflinks? Ethan's voice echoed from the bathroom. I sighed, fishing them out of my purse. Here, he emerged, looking dashing in his tuxedo. Thanks, babe. You're not dressed yet? The premiere starts in an hour. I'm not feeling well, I lied. You go ahead without me. Ethan's brow furrowed. You sure? It's a big night for me. I know. Break a leg. As soon as the door closed behind him, I sprang into action. I'd been biding my time, gathering intel. Tonight was the night I'd start putting my plan into motion. I dialed Phil's number. He's gone. You ready? On my way, Phil replied. 15 minutes later, we were huddled over my laptop in the hotel room. You sure about this, Kat? Phil asked, concern etched on his face. I nodded grimly. He needs to be exposed, Phil, for what he's done to me, to our marriage. We spent the next hour combing through Ethan's emails and text messages. What we found made my blood run cold. Look at this, Phil pointed to an email chain. He's been planning to leave you for months. Says here he's waiting for the right moment to maximize publicity. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away. Keep looking. As we dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Ethan had been systematically using people to climb the Hollywood ladder. Old friends, fellow actors, even his own family, all pawns in his game. Kat, Phil's voice was soft. There's something else you should see. He pulled up a series of messages between Ethan and Amanda, his co-star. My heart sank as I read their intimate exchanges. Plans for secret rendezvous, promises of a future together. I'm so sorry, Phil said, squeezing my hand. I pulled away, anger replacing hurt. Don't be. This is exactly what I needed. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Where are you? Press is asking about you. I smirked, an idea forming. Phil, how fast can you get me to that premiere? 30 minutes later, I strode down the red carpet, cameras flashing. Ethan's jaw dropped when he saw me. Kat, what are you doing here? I thought you were sick. I plastered on my best smile for the cameras. And miss your big night? Never. As we posed for photos, I whispered in his ear, we need to talk. Now. We ducked into a quiet corner, away from prying eyes. What's going on? Ethan hissed. I met his gaze steadily. I know everything, Ethan. The affairs, the manipulation, your plans to leave me for publicity. The color drained from his face. Kat, I can explain. Save it. I cut him off. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to end things with Amanda, quietly. You're going to finish this film, and then we're going home to sort out our divorce. On my terms. Ethan's eyes narrowed. And if I don't? I smiled coldly. Then I go public with everything I've found, every sordid detail. How do you think that'll play for your rising star? For a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Ethan, vulnerable, uncertain, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. You wouldn't dare, he snarled. Try me. We stared each other down, the sounds of the premiere fading into the background. This was it, the point of no return. Ethan finally broke the silence. Fine, you win, for now. As he stormed off, I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. I'd done it. I'd stood up to him, but this was just the beginning. Phil appeared at my side. You okay? I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders. I will be. Come on, we've got a show to put on. As we rejoined the party, I caught sight of Amanda across the room. Our eyes met, and I saw a flicker of guilt cross her face. Good. Let her squirm. The game was on, and I was playing to win. The Vancouver shoot was wrapping up, and with it, my patience. Ethan's transformation was complete. He'd become a stranger, consumed by his own hype and Hollywood's glitter. I stood in our hotel suite, packing up the last of our belongings. Ethan burst in, his face flushed with excitement. Kat, you won't believe this. I've been offered the lead in a major studio film. It's huge. I forced a smile. That's great, honey. When does it start? That's the thing, he said, avoiding my gaze. It's a 3-picture deal. We'd have to move to LA permanently. The room spun. What about our home? Our life back in. Come on, Kat, Ethan interrupted. This is my big break. Our big break. Don't you want that for us? I bit back a retort. Us? There hadn't been an us for months. I need some air, I muttered, grabbing my coat. Vancouver's streets were a blur as I walked, my mind racing. How had we come to this? The modest dreams we once shared seemed like a lifetime ago. My phone buzzed. A text from Phil. Emergency at the studio. Need you here ASAP. Grateful for the distraction, I hurried to the production office. Phil was pacing, looking agitated. What's wrong? I asked. He handed me a tablet. Look at this. It was an entertainment news site. The headline made my blood run cold. Rising star Ethan Morgan's secret double life exposed. The article detailed Ethan's affairs, including Amanda, complete with incriminating photos and text messages. My hands shook as I scrolled through it. Kat, I swear I didn't leak this, Phil said, his voice urgent. I believed him. But if he didn't, who did? As if on cue, my phone rang. Ethan, have you seen it? He demanded without preamble. I'm looking at it now, I replied, keeping my voice steady. This is a disaster, he groaned. My agent's going crazy, the studio's threatening to pull the deal. A cold clarity washed over me. What do you want me to do, Ethan? There was a pause. We need to present a united front, show them we're rock solid. Can you do a joint interview with me? Deny everything? The audacity of his request stunned me into silence. Kat, are you there? This is important. My career is on the line here. His career. Of course, that's all that mattered to him now. I'll think about it, I said, finally ending the call. Phil watched me warily. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I don't know yet, but I'm done being a pawn in his game. Back at the hotel, Ethan was frantic. There you are. We need to get our story straight before the press conference. No, I said quietly. He froze. What? I said no, Ethan. I won't lie for you. His face darkened. After everything I've done for us, this is how you repay me? I laughed bitterly. Everything you've done for us? You mean cheating on me? Planning to leave me for publicity? Ethan paled. How did you? It doesn't matter. I cut him off. What matters is I'm done. I won't be your prop anymore. He grabbed my arm. You can't do this to me. I'll be ruined. I yanked free. You did this to yourself. As I turned to leave, Ethan's voice stopped me. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I met his gaze, seeing the stranger he'd become. In that moment, I made my decision. Goodbye, Ethan. I walked out, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I was reclaiming my life, my identity. As I stepped into the cool Vancouver night, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the news. Time to tell your side of the story? Madeline Shaw, Lifestyle Magazine. I stared at the message, a plan forming in my mind. Maybe it was time to pick up that pen again, after all. I sat across from Madeline Shaw in a quiet cafe, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. The veteran journalist studied me with keen eyes, her recorder placed between us. Are you sure you want to do this, Catalina? She asked, her voice gentle but probing. I took a deep breath. I'm sure. It's time the truth came out. As I began to speak, the words flowed like a dam breaking. I told her everything. The early days of love and sacrifice, the gradual erosion of our relationship, and finally the betrayal that shattered it all. Madeline listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions. When I finished, she leaned back, a look of admiration on her face. You're incredibly brave, you know that? I shrugged, feeling drained but oddly liberated. I'm just tired of living a lie. As we wrapped up the interview, my phone buzzed. A text from Phil. Ethan's looking for you, says it's urgent. I sighed, thanking Madeline and heading back to the hotel. Ethan was pacing in our suite, his face a mask of fury. Where the hell have you been? He demanded. Out, I replied coolly. What's so urgent? He thrust his phone at me. On the screen was an email from his agent. My stomach dropped as I read it. They're canceling the deal, Ethan said, his voice trembling with rage. All because of those damn rumors. We need to fix this, Kat. Now. I handed the phone back, my resolve hardening. No, Ethan, we don't. His eyes widened in disbelief. What are you talking about? I'm done covering for you, I said, my voice steady. In fact, I just gave an interview to Madeline Shaw. The whole truth is coming out. The color drained from Ethan's face. You what? You heard me, I replied, standing my ground. No more lies, no more manipulation. It's over. Ethan's shock quickly morphed into anger. He grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. You can't do this to me. I'll ruin you. Kat, I swear I will. I yanked my arm free, adrenaline coursing through me. Go ahead and try. I'm not afraid of you anymore. As I turned to leave, Ethan's voice stopped me cold. What about Amanda? Did you tell them about the baby? I froze, my hand on the doorknob. What baby? Ethan's laugh was cruel. Oh, you didn't know? Amanda's pregnant. Guess I forgot to mention that little detail. The room spun. I steadied myself against the wall, fighting waves of nausea. A baby. Ethan and Amanda were having a baby. Kat? Phil's voice cut through the haze. He stood in the doorway, concern etched on his face. Everything okay? I brushed past him, needing to escape. The hotel corridors blurred as I ran, finally bursting out onto the street. The cool night air hit my face, bringing me back to reality. My phone buzzed. Madeline. Article's ready for review. You sure about this? I stared at the message, my mind reeling. The truth was out there now, waiting to be shared with the world. But at what cost? A child, an innocent life, would be caught in the crossfire. As I stood there, torn between vengeance and compassion, a memory surfaced. Aunt Madeline's voice, wise and gentle. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show mercy, even to those who don't deserve it. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the phone. This was it, the point of no return. Whatever I decided now would shape not just my future, but the lives of everyone involved. The city lights blurred as tears filled my eyes. I blinked them away, steeling myself for what came next. It was time to make a choice, one that I could live with, no matter the consequences. With trembling fingers, I typed my response to Madeline, sealing my fate and the fate of those around me. I stared at my phone, my finger hovering over the send button. The message to Madeline was simple. Hold the story. We need to talk. Just then, a knock at the door startled me. It was Phil, his face etched with concern. Kat, what's going on? I saw Ethan storming out of the hotel. I took a deep breath. Phil, I need your help. Things are about to get complicated. As I filled him in on the latest developments, including Amanda's pregnancy, Phil's expression shifted from shock to determination. What do you want to do? He asked. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. With trembling hands, I answered. Kat, we need to talk. Ethan's voice was unnervingly calm. Meet me at the studio in an hour. Alone. I agreed, ending the call with a sense of foreboding. Phil grabbed my arm. You can't go alone. It's not safe. I shook my head. I have to do this, Phil, but I need you to do something for me. An hour later, I walked into the deserted studio. Ethan stood in the center of the soundstage, bathed in a single spotlight. I'm glad you came, he said, his voice echoing in the empty space. What do you want, Ethan? He stepped closer, his eyes glinting. I want a divorce, Kat, on my terms. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd seen it coming, the reality was devastating. Your terms? I managed to choke out. Ethan's smile was cold. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement. You'll tell the press our split is amicable, and you'll walk away with nothing. Anger flared within me. And why would I agree to that? He pulled out his phone, playing a recording. My blood ran cold as I heard my own voice, detailing Ethan's affairs to Madeline Shaw. "If this gets out, my career is over," Ethan said. "But so is yours. No one in this industry will ever trust you again." I felt the walls closing in. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, was hanging by a thread. "You have until tomorrow to decide," Ethan continued. "Choose wisely, Kat." As he turned to leave, something inside me snapped. Years of suppressed anger and resentment bubbled to the surface. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Ethan paused. "What did you say?" I said, "No, Ethan. I won't be bullied into silence. Not anymore." He laughed, but I detected a note of uncertainty. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare." I pulled out my own phone, hitting play on a recording I'd made earlier. Ethan's voice filled the studio, admitting to his affairs and manipulation. His face paled. "How did you?" "I learned from the best," I replied, a grim smile on my face. "You're not the only one who can play games, Ethan." For a moment, I saw fear in his eyes. Then his expression hardened. "You'll regret this, Kat. I'll make sure of it." As he stormed out, my phone buzzed. A text from Phil. "It's done. Check your email." With shaking hands, I opened my inbox. There it was, a contract from a major streaming service offering to turn my story into a limited series. Tears stung my eyes as the reality sank in. This was it, my chance to reclaim my voice, my story. But as the adrenaline faded, doubt crept in. Was I ready for the world to know everything? Could I handle the scrutiny, the judgment? My phone buzzed again. This time it was Aunt Madeline. "Remember who you are, Kat," her message read. "Your story deserves to be told." I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was mine to choose. With renewed determination, I dialed Madeline Shaw's number. It was time to tell my story, on my terms. As the phone rang, I steeled myself for what was to come. The real battle was just beginning. The studio lights were blinding as I sat across from Madeline Shaw, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. "We're live in 3, 2, 1. The producer's voice faded as the red light blinked on. Madeline smiled warmly. "Welcome, Catalina. Thank you for joining us today." I took a deep breath. "Thank you for having me, Madeline. Your story has captivated the nation," she began. "A Hollywood fairy tale turned nightmare. Can you tell us what really happened?" As I began to speak, the words flowed easier than I expected. I recounted the early days with Ethan, the sacrifices I'd made, and the gradual erosion of our relationship. "And then," I said, my voice steady, "I found evidence of his affairs." Madeline leaned in. "How did you react?" "At first I was devastated," I admitted, "but then I got angry. And that anger turned into determination." Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, focusing on the interview. "You mentioned a turning point," Madeline prompted. "Can you elaborate?" I nodded, steeling myself. "It was when I discovered Ethan's plan to divorce me for publicity. He wanted to use our breakup to boost his career." The studio fell silent. Even Madeline looked shocked. "That's quite an accusation," she said carefully. "Do you have proof?" This was the moment I'd been dreading and preparing for. I pulled out my phone, playing the recording of Ethan's admission. As his voice filled the studio, I saw the crew exchanging glances. Madeline's eyes widened. "Catalina," she said softly, "this is extraordinary. Are you prepared for the consequences of sharing this?" Before I could answer, the studio door burst open. Ethan stormed in, his face contorted with rage. "Cut the cameras," he shouted. "This interview is over." The studio erupted into chaos. Security guards rushed in, but Ethan pushed past them, reaching for my phone. "You can't do this, Kat," he hissed. "Think about Amanda, the baby." I stood my ground, my voice surprisingly calm. "I have thought about them, Ethan. That's why I'm doing this. The truth needs to come out." He lunged for me, but Phil appeared out of nowhere, restraining him. "It's over, Ethan," Phil said firmly. "Let her speak." As security dragged Ethan away, his shouts echoing through the studio, I turned back to a stunned Madeline. "I'm so sorry," I began, but she held up a hand. "No apologies necessary," she said, a glint of admiration in her eyes. "This is the most riveting television I've seen in years." The producer approached, looking nervous. "We're still live. What do you want to do?" Madeline looked at me questioningly. This was my chance to back out, to keep some semblance of privacy. But as I looked around the studio, at Phil's encouraging nod, at the crew's expectant faces, at Madeline's steady gaze, I knew what I had to do. "Keep rolling," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. As I settled back into my seat, Madeline leaned forward. "Catalina, you've just experienced a shocking interruption. Are you okay to continue?" I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yes, I am, because this isn't just about me and Ethan anymore. It's about every woman who's been silenced, manipulated, or made to feel less than she is." Madeline's eyes sparkled. "Then by all means, continue. The floor is yours." As I began to speak again, pouring out the full story without holding back, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Years of pent-up emotions, of swallowed words and stifled dreams came rushing out. But with each revelation, each painful truth laid bare, I felt stronger. This was my story, my voice, and no one could take that away from me. As the interview drew to a close, Madeline asked one final question. "Catalina, what's next for you?" I smiled, feeling a surge of hope for the first time in years. "I'm not sure," I admitted, "but I know it'll be on my terms, and that's a start." As the cameras stopped rolling, I realized this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. My beginning. The aftermath of the interview was a whirlwind. My phone wouldn't stop ringing, my inbox overflowed, and paparazzi camped outside my hotel. But amidst the chaos, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. A week after the broadcast, I sat in a sleek office overlooking Los Angeles, facing a panel of executives from the streaming service. "We want to greenlight your series, Catalina," the head producer said, sliding a contract across the table. "Your story has resonated with millions. We believe it could be groundbreaking." I stared at the document, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for the pen. This was it, my chance to tell my story, on my terms. As I signed, a commotion erupted outside. Ethan's voice, loud and angry, carried through the door. "You can't do this," he shouted. "That's my life story, too." The door burst open, and there he stood, disheveled and desperate. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I once loved. "Ethan," I said calmly, "it's over." He deflated, sinking into a chair. "Cat, please. My career is ruined. Amanda left me. I have nothing." The room fell silent, all eyes on me. This was the moment of truth, the climax of our tumultuous journey. I took a deep breath. "You're right, Ethan. You do have nothing. But that's not because of me. It's because of your choices." He looked up, his eyes pleading. "Can't we work something out, for old time's sake?" I shook my head, feeling a surge of strength. "No, Ethan. I'm done compromising myself for you. This is my story now, and I'm going to tell it." As security escorted him out, I turned back to the executives. "I'm sorry about that. Where were we?" The head producer smiled. "I think we just witnessed the perfect ending to your first season." Laughter filled the room, breaking the tension. As we discussed the details of the show, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. This wasn't just a career opportunity. It was a chance at redemption, at reclaiming my voice. Months flew by in a blur of writing sessions, casting calls, and production meetings. Before I knew it, I was standing on set, watching actors bring my story to life. On the night of the premiere, I stood backstage, heart pounding. The theater was packed with industry bigwigs, critics, and fans who had followed my journey. As the lights dimmed and the first scene played, I felt a hand slip into mine. It was Phil. "You did it, Kat," he whispered. "You took control of your narrative." Tears welled in my eyes as I watched my story unfold on the big screen. The pain, the betrayal, the struggle, but also the strength, the resilience, the triumph. When the credits rolled, the audience erupted into applause. As I stepped onto the stage for the Q&A, I was met with a standing ovation. Looking out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some new, I felt a surge of gratitude. For Aunt Madeline's unwavering support, for Phil's steadfast friendship, for every person who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. As I fielded questions about the show and my journey, one reporter asked, "Catalina, what would you say to other women who feel trapped in toxic relationships?" I paused, considering my words carefully. I would say this: your story matters, your voice matters, and it's never too late to reclaim your narrative. The room fell silent, hanging on my every word. I spent years dimming my light for someone else, I continued, but the moment I decided to shine, everything changed. So to every woman out there wondering if she's strong enough, brave enough, worthy enough, the answer is yes. Always yes. As the applause washed over me, I felt a profound sense of peace. This wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning. My beginning. Later that night, as I stood on my hotel balcony overlooking the city, I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. "Aunt Madeline? It's Kat. I did it. I really did it." Her warm laughter filled the line. "I never doubted you for a second, my dear. Now, tell me everything." As I recounted the evening's events, I realized that this moment of connection, of sharing, of being truly seen and heard, this was what it was all about. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every woman who had ever felt silenced, every person who had ever doubted their worth. And as I looked out at the twinkling lights of Los Angeles, I knew that the best chapters of my life were still to come. The clock on the mantel chimed 7, each resonant toll a mocking reminder of Max's tardiness. I smoothed my dress for the umpteenth time, willing the wrinkles away as if I could iron out the creases in our marriage just as easily. "Anna, honey, why don't you sit down?" My mother-in-law Lily's voice was gentle, her eyes filled with concern. "I'm sure Max will be here any minute." I forced a smile. "You're right, Lily, I'm just being silly." But as I lowered myself onto the sofa, my stomach churned with an unease I couldn't shake. The front door swung open, and Max strode in, his tie askew and a wild look in his eyes. "Anna, we need to talk." My heart plummeted. "Max, what's wrong? You look—" "Not here," he interrupted, glancing at his mother. "Let's go upstairs." I followed him to our bedroom, my legs feeling like lead. As soon as the door closed behind us, Max turned to me, his face a mask of guilt and anguish. "I've made a terrible mistake, Anna. I've been seeing someone else." The world tilted on its axis. "What?" I whispered, gripping the dresser for support. "Her name is Sophia. It started as just lunch meetings, but then—" Max trailed off, unable to meet my gaze. "How long?" I demanded, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. 6 months, he admitted, and I felt as if I'd been punched in the gut. 6 months, I echoed, my mind reeling. "While I've been here taking care of your mother, our home, you've been—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Max reached for me, but I recoiled. "Don't touch me," I hissed. "Anna, please, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Oh, you never meant for it to happen? What, did you trip and fall into her bed?" "It's not like that," Max protested weakly. "Then what is it like, Max? Explain it to me. Help me understand how you could betray everything we've built together." Before he could answer, a soft knock at the door interrupted us. Lily's voice drifted through, tinged with worry. "Is everything all right in there?" I opened my mouth to respond, but Max beat me to it. "Everything's fine, Mom. We'll be down in a minute." I stared at him in disbelief. "Fine? Nothing is fine, Max. Nothing will ever be fine again." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "What do you want me to say, Anna? That I'm a terrible person? That I've ruined everything?" "I want you to tell me why," I said, my voice breaking. "Was I not enough? Did I not love you enough, support you enough?" Max's shoulders sagged. "It's not about you, Anna. I don't know, I got caught up in something I couldn't control." "Couldn't control?" I repeated, incredulous. "You're a grown man, Max. You made choices that have destroyed our marriage, our family." Another knock at the door, more insistent this time. "Anna? Max, dinner's getting cold." I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. "We'll be right there, Lily," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. Turning back to Max, I fixed him with a hard stare. "We're going to go downstairs and have dinner with your mother. We're going to act like everything is normal. And then, when she goes to bed, you're going to pack a bag and leave." "Anna, please." "No," I cut him off. "I can't even look at you right now. I need time to think, to process this. And I can't do that with you here." Max nodded, defeated. As I reached for the doorknob, he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I do love you, Anna. I know you might not believe that right now, but it's true." I paused, my hand on the door. Without turning around, I replied, "Love isn't supposed to hurt like this, Max." With that, I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, leaving behind the shattered remains of the life I thought I knew. As I descended the stairs, plastering on a smile for Lily's benefit, I wondered how I would ever put the pieces back together again. The tires screeched as I pulled into my mother's driveway, my vision blurred by tears. I stumbled out of the car, barely remembering to grab my hastily packed bag. The porch light flickered on, and Mom's silhouette appeared in the doorway. Anna? Honey, what's wrong? Her voice was thick with concern. I collapsed into her arms, sobs racking my body. It's over, Mom. Everything's over. She guided me inside, settling me on the worn couch that had witnessed so many of our family's dramas. Tell me what happened, sweetheart. Between hiccuping sobs, I spilled the whole sordid tale. Max's affair, the lies, the betrayal. Mom's face grew stormy as I spoke, her hands clenching into fists. That no good son of a... She cut herself off, taking a deep breath. I'm so sorry, Anna. You don't deserve this. What am I going to do? I whispered, feeling lost and small. I've given everything to that family. My time, my love, my career. Mom's eyes flashed with determination. You're going to pick yourself up and show Max what he's lost. You're stronger than this, Anna. You always have been. A knock at the door startled us both. Mom peered through the peephole and let out a string of curses that would make a sailor blush. It's Max, she hissed. Want me to send him packing? Part of me wanted to hide, to never face him again. But anger flared in my chest, hot and fierce. No, I'll talk to him. I yanked open the door to find Max looking disheveled and desperate. Anna, please, can we talk? Haven't you said enough? I spat. He flinched, but pressed on. I made a terrible mistake. I want to make things right. A bitter laugh escaped me. Make things right? How exactly do you plan to do that, Max? Unsleep with her? Unbreak my heart? I'll do anything, he pleaded. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. I love you, Anna. The words hit me like a physical blow. Love? You don't even know what that word means. From behind me, Mom's voice rang out, cold and sharp. I think you should leave now, Max, before I forget my manners. He looked between us, desperation etched on his face. Anna, please, think of Lily. She needs you. White-hot rage surged through me. Don't you dare use your mother against me. I've been there for her more than you ever have. I know, and I'm grateful, but she's asking for you. She doesn't understand why you left. Guilt twisted in my gut, warring with my anger. Tell her I'm not feeling well. I'll call her tomorrow. Max nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Does this mean... It means nothing. I cut him off. I need time, Max. Time away from you and your lies. His shoulders slumped in defeat. I understand, but Anna, please remember that I love you. I'll do whatever it takes to prove it to you. As he turned to leave, a car pulled up and a statuesque blonde stepped out. My heart stopped as I realized who it must be. Max? Sophia called out, her voice sickeningly sweet. I was worried when you didn't come home. The world tilted on its axis as the full weight of Max's betrayal hit me anew. He'd moved her into our home already? Max whirled around, panic written across his face. Sophia, what are you doing here? But I'd heard enough. I slammed the door shut, sliding down to the floor as sobs overtook me once more. Mom knelt beside me, her arms encircling my shaking form. Oh, honey, she murmured. It's going to be okay. We'll get through this together. As the sounds of arguing drifted through the door, I clung to my mother, feeling like a little girl again. But beneath the pain and betrayal, a spark of determination flickered to life. I would survive this. I would rebuild my life, with or without Max. And as for Sophia, well, she was about to learn that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. The fluorescent lights of the employment agency buzzed overhead, matching the nervous energy thrumming through my veins. I smoothed down my freshly ironed blouse, feeling like an imposter in clothes I hadn't worn in years. Anna Lawson? A bored voice called out. I stood, forcing a smile. That's me. The woman behind the desk barely glanced up from her computer. Resume? I handed over the single sheet of paper, my stomach churning. There wasn't much on it, just my college degree and a string of volunteer work. The woman's eyebrows rose as she scanned it. I see you've been out of the workforce for quite some time, she said, her tone making it clear what she thought of that. I've been caring for my mother-in-law, I explained, hating how defensive I sounded. She has Alzheimer's. The woman's expression softened slightly. That's admirable, but I'm afraid it doesn't translate well to the current job market. Have you considered retail? My heart sank. I was hoping for something in marketing or communications. That's what my degree is in. She shook her head. With no recent experience? I'm sorry, but that's not realistic. You might want to look into some courses to update your skills. I left the agency feeling deflated, my mother's words echoing in my head. You're stronger than this, Anna. But was I? Years of putting everyone else first had left me feeling hollow, unsure of who I even was anymore. As I walked down the street, a help wanted sign in a small cafe window caught my eye. Without thinking, I pushed open the door. The owner, a kind-faced woman named Ellen, listened patiently as I stumbled through my story. To my surprise, she offered me a job on the spot. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said with a warm smile, "and I could use someone with your people skills." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As I left the cafe, I spotted a familiar figure across the street, Sophia, laughing and linking arms with a friend. She looked carefree, as if she hadn't just blown up my entire life. Before I could duck away, she saw me. Her laughter died, replaced by a look of guilt mixed with defiance. She whispered something to her friend and started walking towards me. My heart raced. I wasn't ready for this confrontation. But as she got closer, I straightened my spine. I wouldn't let her see me broken. "Anna," she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "I'm so glad I ran into you. I think we should talk." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what could we possibly have to talk about?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I know this situation is complicated, but I want you to know I never meant to hurt you. Max and it just happened." Anger flared in my chest. "Just happened? Like tripping and falling into my husband's bed?" Sophia flinched. "It wasn't like that. Max told me he was separated. I didn't know." "Save it." I cut her off. "I don't want to hear your excuses. You and Max deserve each other." I turned to leave, but her next words stopped me cold. "Anna, wait. There's something you should know about Max, about why he really left." I hesitated, torn between my desire to know and my need to protect what was left of my heart. "What are you talking about?" Sophia glanced around nervously. "Not here. Can we go somewhere private?" Against my better judgment, I nodded. As we walked to a nearby park, my mind raced with possibilities. What could Sophia possibly know that I didn't? And more importantly, did I really want to find out? As we sat on a bench, Sophia took a deep breath. "Anna, the truth is, Max didn't leave just because of me. There's someone else, someone who's been in his life for a long time." The world tilted on its axis as I processed her words. Someone else. How many lies had Max told? And who was this mysterious other person? As Sophia opened her mouth to continue, I braced myself for a revelation that I knew would change everything. I stared at Sophia, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you mean, someone else? Who?" She took a deep breath, her eyes darting nervously. It's Lily." The world tilted on its axis. "Lily, his mother? What are you talking about?" Sophia's voice dropped to a whisper. "Max has been embezzling from Lily's accounts for years. He's been using her Alzheimer's as a cover." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That's impossible. I've been taking care of Lily. I would have noticed." "Would you?" Sophia challenged. "Max handled all the finances. He kept you busy with her day-to-day care." My mind raced, piecing together fragments of memories. The times Max insisted on handling the bills alone. The lavish gifts he'd buy for no reason. The way he'd change the subject whenever I asked about our finances. "Oh God," I whispered, feeling sick. "How long have you known?" Sophia had the grace to look ashamed. "I found out a few weeks ago. That's why I ended things with him. I couldn't be part of that." Anger flared in my chest. "But you were fine being part of destroying my marriage?" She flinched. "I told you, I didn't know he was married. But this is different. It's criminal." I stood up abruptly, needing to move, to think. "I need proof. I can't just take your word for it." Sophia nodded, pulling out her phone. "I took pictures of some documents I found in his office. I'll send them to you." As the images loaded on my phone, my world crumbled around me. Bank statements, forged signatures, offshore accounts, all in Lily's name, all managed by Max. "I have to go," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "I need to check on Lily." Sophia caught my arm. "Anna, be careful. Max doesn't know I've told you. If he suspects—" I shook her off. "I can handle Max." But as I hurried towards Lily's house, doubt crept in. Could I really handle this? The man I thought I knew, the man I'd loved for over a decade, was a stranger to me now. I let myself into Lily's house with the spare key, finding her dozing in her favorite armchair. Relief washed over me at the sight of her, peaceful and unaware of the storm brewing around her. "Anna?" Lily's eyes fluttered open. "Is that you, dear?" I knelt beside her, taking her frail hand in mine. Yes, Lily, it's me. How are you feeling? She smiled, the familiar confusion clouding her eyes. Oh, I'm fine. But where's Max? He was supposed to take me to the bank today. My blood ran cold. The bank? What for? Lily's brow furrowed. Something about changing my accounts. He said it was important. Panic surged through me. Was Max planning to clean out her accounts and run? I had to stop him. Lily, listen to me, I said urgently. I need you to stay here. Don't go anywhere with Max, okay? I'll be back soon. She nodded, already drifting back to sleep. I kissed her forehead and rushed out, dialing my mother's number. Mom, I need your help, I said as soon as she answered. Can you come stay with Lily? It's an emergency. Of course, honey. What's going on? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I can't explain now, but I think Max is about to do something terrible. I have to stop him. As I hung up, a text from an unknown number popped up on my screen. Meet me at the Oakwood Bank in 30 minutes if you want to save Lily's money. Come alone. My hands shook as I stared at the message. This was it, the moment of truth. I could walk away, let Max deal with the consequences of his actions. Or I could fight for Lily, for justice, for everything I'd lost. Taking a deep breath, I made my decision. It was time to face Max, and whatever came next, head on. As I got into my car, I realized that the woman who had started this journey, the devoted wife, the selfless caretaker, was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone stronger, someone ready for a fight. The Oakwood Bank loomed before me, its glass facade reflecting the late afternoon sun. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, steeling myself for the confrontation ahead. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and marched towards the entrance. Max was waiting in the lobby, his face a mask of cool indifference. Anna, I'm surprised you came. Cut the act, Max, I hissed. I know what you've been doing to Lily's money. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second before narrowing. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I snapped, my voice echoing in the quiet lobby. A few heads turned our way. Sophia told me everything. The embezzlement, the offshore accounts. How could you do this to your own mother? Max's facade cracked, revealing a flash of panic. Keep your voice down, he growled, grabbing my arm and steering me towards a more secluded corner. I yanked my arm free. Don't touch me. You've lost that right. He ran a hand through his hair, his composure slipping. Look, Anna, it's not what you think. I was just managing her assets. By stealing from her? I scoffed. You're pathetic, Max. His eyes hardened. You don't understand. I had debts, investments that went south. I was going to pay it all back. With what? More of Lily's money? I shook my head in disgust. I won't let you do this. Max's expression turned dangerous. You can't stop me, Anna. I have power of attorney. Not for long, I countered. I've already called Lily's lawyer. He's on his way with the police. The color drained from Max's face. You're bluffing. Try me, I challenged, praying he couldn't see through my lie. For a moment, we stood in tense silence, the weight of years of betrayal and lies hanging between us. Then Max's shoulders slumped in defeat. What do you want? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I want you to make this right, I said firmly. Sign over your power of attorney to me. I'll manage Lily's affairs from now on. Max's eyes flashed with anger. And what about her inheritance? You expect me to just hand that over too? I felt a surge of righteous fury. That inheritance was never yours to begin with, Max. It belongs to Lily, and after her, it should go to charity, just like she always wanted. He laughed bitterly. And what about you, Anna? Don't tell me you never thought about that money. Unlike you, I spat, I actually care about Lily. I'm not in this for the money. Max's face contorted with rage. You sanctimonious bitch. You think you're so much better than me? Before I could react, he lunged forward, grabbing my purse. If I can't have the money, neither can you. We grappled for the bag, drawing alarmed looks from the bank staff. In the struggle, the contents of my purse spilled onto the floor, including the phone with the incriminating evidence. Max dove for the phone, but I was quicker. I snatched it up, backing away from him. It's over, Max. You've lost. Security guards approached, alerted by the commotion. Max's eyes darted between me and the exits, panic written across his face. This isn't over, he snarled, before turning and bolting towards the door. As the guards gave chase, I sank onto a nearby chair, my legs suddenly weak. The full weight of what had just happened crashed over me. I had stood up to Max, protected Lily, but at what cost? My phone buzzed with a message from Mom. Lily's asking for you. She seems agitated. What's going on? Reality came crashing back. This wasn't over yet. I still had to break the news to Lily, deal with the legal fallout, and somehow put the pieces of my shattered life back together. As I stood to leave, a steely resolve settled over me. I had survived Max's betrayal and fought back against his schemes. Whatever came next, I would face it head on. For Lily, for myself, and for the woman I was becoming, stronger, wiser, and ready to reclaim her life. The lawyer's office felt suffocating, the tension palpable as I sat across from Max and Sophia. My hands trembled slightly, but I clenched them tightly, determined not to show weakness. "Let's get this over with," Max growled, his eyes darting between me and his lawyer. I took a deep breath. "I want full control of Lily's finances and medical decisions, and I want a fair division of our assets," Max scoffed. "You're delusional. You have no right to Lily's affairs." "I have every right," I countered, my voice steady. "I've been her primary caregiver for years, and I have evidence of your embezzlement." His face paled. "You're bluffing." I pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. "Bank statements, forged signatures, offshore accounts, it's all here." Max's lawyer leafed through the documents, his expression growing grave. He whispered something to Max, whose face contorted with rage. "You conniving bitch," he snarled. "You set me up." Sophia shifted uncomfortably. "Max, maybe we should—" "Shut up," he snapped at her. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't opened your big mouth—" "Enough," I interrupted, slamming my hand on the table. "This ends now, Max. You have two choices. Settle fairly, or I go to the police." The room fell silent, the weight of my ultimatum hanging heavy in the air. Max's eyes darted around like a cornered animal searching for escape. Finally, his shoulders slumped. "Fine. What do you want?" Relief washed over me, but I kept my expression neutral. "Full custody of Lily, half of our marital assets, and you sign over your power of attorney." Max's lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously, but Max waved him off. "Just do it. I want this over." As the lawyers drafted the agreement, I felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. This was the end of my marriage, the final nail in the coffin of a life I'd thought was perfect. Sophia cleared her throat. "Anna, I'm sorry. For everything." I met her gaze, seeing genuine remorse there. "I'm not the one you should be apologizing to," I said quietly, nodding towards Lily's photo on the desk. As we signed the papers, a commotion outside caught our attention. The door burst open, and Lily stumbled in, looking confused and agitated. "Max? Anna, what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. My heart sank. "Lily, you shouldn't be here. How did you—" "I followed you," she said, her eyes darting between us. "Why are you all looking at me like that? What's happening?" Max stood, reaching for her. "Mom, it's okay. We're just sorting out some paperwork." But Lily recoiled from his touch. "Don't lie to me. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. You're fighting over my money, aren't you?" The room fell silent, shame written across every face. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Is this all I am to you? A bank account?" "No, Lily," I said softly, moving towards her. "We're trying to protect you." She backed away, her expression hardening. "Protect me? By going behind my back? I trusted you, Anna, both of you." The betrayal in her eyes cut me to the core. Everything I'd done for her. But in that moment, I realized the cost of my actions. Lily turned, stumbling towards the door. "I need to get out of here." "Lily, wait," I called, but she was already gone. I moved to follow, but Max grabbed my arm. "Let her go. You've done enough damage." Anger flared within me. "Me? You're the one who—" A crash from the hallway cut me off, then a scream that chilled my blood. "Lily!" I cried, breaking free from Max's grip and rushing out. The sight that greeted me stopped me in my tracks. Lily lay crumpled at the bottom of the stairs, motionless. As I ran to her, my mind raced. How had everything gone so wrong? In trying to protect Lily, had I inadvertently caused her harm? The weight of my choices pressed down on me as I knelt beside her still form, praying for a miracle and wondering if I'd ever be able to forgive myself if the worst had happened. The hospital waiting room was a blur of activity, but I felt frozen in time. Lily's frail form, crumpled at the bottom of those stairs, was seared into my mind. How could I have let this happen? "Mrs. Lawson?" A doctor approached, his face unreadable. I stood on shaky legs. "Yes? How is she?" "Your mother-in-law is stable, but she's suffered a severe concussion and a broken hip. We'll need to operate." Relief and dread warred within me. "Can I see her?" The doctor nodded, leading me to Lily's room. She looked so small, so fragile in that hospital bed. Her eyes fluttered open as I approached. "Anna?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I took her hand, fighting back tears. "I'm here, Lily. I'm so sorry." She squeezed my hand weakly. "Not your fault. I overheard everything." My heart sank. "Lily?" No, she interrupted. "I need to say this. Max, he's been lying to me for years, hasn't he?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "And you've been protecting me, all this time." "I should have told you," I whispered. "I thought I was doing the right thing." She managed a small smile. "You were. You are. Anna, I want you to have everything." I blinked in confusion. "What?" "My estate, my care. I trust you, not Max. You." Before I could respond, the door burst open. Max stormed in, followed closely by Sophia. "Get away from her." Max snarled at me. Lily's grip on my hand tightened. "No, Max, you're the one who needs to leave." Max's face contorted with rage. "Mom, you don't understand. She's trying to steal your money." "The only thief here is you," Lily said, her voice stronger now. "I heard everything. How could you, Max? Your own mother?" Max paled, realizing he'd been caught. He turned to Sophia, desperation in his eyes. Tell them it was your idea." Sophia recoiled. "What, Max? I never." "Liar." Max lunged at Sophia, but I stepped between them. "That's enough," I shouted. "Both of you, out, now!" As if on cue, hospital security appeared, escorting Max and Sophia from the room. I turned back to Lily, my heart racing. "I'm so sorry you had to see that," I said softly. Lily shook her head. "No, I needed to. Anna, I want to change my will. Right now." "Lily, you don't have to." "I do," she insisted. "I want you to have everything, to use it how you see fit." I felt overwhelmed. "But what about Max? He's your son." Lily's eyes hardened. "He stopped being my son the moment he betrayed me. And you've been more family to me than he ever was." As Lily's lawyer was called and the new will drawn up, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Triumph, yes, but also a deep sadness for the family that had been torn apart. Hours later, as I left the hospital, exhausted but relieved that Lily was resting comfortably, I found Sophia waiting for me in the parking lot. "Anna, wait," she called out. "I need to talk to you." I turned, wary. "What is it, Sophia?" She wrung her hands nervously. I want to make things right. I have information about Max, about other things he's done. I want to help you take him down." I studied her face, searching for any sign of deceit. "Why now?" Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Because I was wrong about everything, and I'm tired of being part of his lies." As I stood there considering Sophia's offer, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could walk away, content with what I'd already won. Or I could push further, expose Max completely, ensure he could never hurt anyone again. The choice I made in that moment would change everything. And as I opened my mouth to respond, I knew there was no turning back. The cafe bustled with the lunchtime crowd, but my focus remained laser-sharp on the door. When Max and Sophia walked in, arm in arm, my heart raced with a mix of anticipation and righteous anger. "Welcome to Ellen's Cafe," I said, plastering on my best customer service smile. "Right this way, please." Max's eyes widened in recognition. "Anna, what are you doing here?" "I work here now," I replied coolly, leading them to a secluded corner booth. "Today's special is revenge, served ice cold." Sophia shifted uncomfortably. "Anna, I save it." I cut her off. "You'll both want to try our chef's special. It's to die for." As I walked away, I could feel their eyes boring into my back. In the kitchen, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I returned with 2 plates of the most extravagant yet utterly inedible dishes I could concoct. Overcooked pasta drowning in a sauce that was more salt than flavor, garnished with wilted herbs and what appeared to be burnt cheese. "Enjoy," I said, setting the plates down with a flourish. Max poked at his meal suspiciously. "What is this supposed to be?" "It's called betrayal à la mode," I replied sweetly. I thought it fitting. Sophia took a tentative bite and immediately spat it out. "This is disgusting. I demand to speak to the manager." "You're looking at her," I said, my smile never wavering. "Ellen was kind enough to give me full control of the cafe today. Consider this my parting gift to you both." Max stood abruptly, his face red with anger. "You think this is funny? You've lost everything, Anna. Your marriage, your home, and now you're working in this dump? Pathetic." I laughed, a sound that surprised even me with its genuine mirth. "Oh, Max, You really don't get it, do you? I haven't lost anything of value. But you've lost everything. On cue, the cafe door opened, and in walked Lily, supported by my mother Ruth, and flanked by two stern-looking men in suits. Max's face drained of color. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Lily's voice was steel. "Watching justice being served, son." One of the suited men stepped forward. "Maxwell Lawson, I'm Detective Johnson. You're under arrest for embezzlement and elder financial abuse." As the detective read Max his rights, Sophia leapt to her feet. "This is ridiculous. You can't do this." In her haste, she knocked over a waiter carrying a tray of drinks. The resulting crash and splash of liquid caused a commotion, drawing the attention of everyone in the cafe. "Assault!" the waiter cried out, perhaps a bit too dramatically. "She assaulted me." Before I knew it, Sophia was being escorted out in handcuffs as well, protesting loudly about the injustice of it all. As the dust settled, I found myself standing alone in the middle of the cafe, surrounded by applauding customers who had just witnessed what they thought was an impromptu piece of dinner theater. Lily approached me, her eyes twinkling. "Well done, my dear. I'd say that was a performance worthy of Broadway." I hugged her gently, mindful of her recent injuries. "I couldn't have done it without you, Lily, or you, Mom," I added as Ruth joined our embrace. As we sat down to enjoy a proper meal, one that was actually edible, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The past few months had been a whirlwind of pain, betrayal, and self-discovery. But here, in this moment, I realized I had emerged stronger, wiser, and surrounded by the love of my true family. "So, what's next for you, Anna?" Ruth asked, squeezing my hand. I smiled, looking around the cafe that had become my sanctuary. "I think I might buy this place. Turn it into something really special." Lily nodded approvingly. "And what about love? Surely a strong, beautiful woman like you won't stay single for long." I laughed, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks as I caught the eye of Tham, the handsome regular who had been leaving me generous tips and kind notes for weeks. "Who knows?" I said, raising my glass in a toast. "But whatever comes next, I'm ready for it. Here's to new beginnings and to the family we choose." As we clinked glasses, I felt a surge of hope and excitement for the future. The old Anna, the doormat, the victim, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had faced her demons, fought for justice, and come out victorious. And that woman? She was just getting started. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it in the dark, my heart racing. Who could be calling at this ungodly hour? "Emily, it's Leo." My breath caught in my throat. "Leo, my ex. The man I'd spent 12 years with, only to have him walk away without a backward glance." "Leo? Why are you calling?" I managed to croak out, my voice thick with sleep and confusion. "I'm sorry, I know it's late. I needed to hear your voice." I sat up, fully awake now. Sam stirred beside me, mumbling something incoherent. I slipped out of bed and padded to the bathroom, closing the door softly behind me. "Leo, it's been a year. Why now?" There was a long pause on the other end. "I made a mistake, Em. Leaving you, it was the biggest mistake of my life." My hand tightened on the phone. "You can't do this. I'm married now." I know. God, Em, I miss you." I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. 12 years of laughter, tears, dreams shared. And then, nothing. He'd left without explanation, leaving me shattered. "Emily?" Sam's voice came from the bedroom. "Everything okay?" "I have to go," I whispered into the phone. "Wait, Em." I hung up, my hands shaking. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to compose myself before facing Sam. "Who was that?" he asked as I slipped back into bed. "Wrong number," I lied, hating myself for it. "Go back to sleep." As Sam's breathing evened out, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Why now? Why, when I was finally settling into my new life? Did Leo have to resurface? The next morning, I went through the motions of making breakfast, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Sam came down, kissing me on the cheek as he grabbed his coffee. "You seem distracted," he said, studying me over the rim of his mug. I forced a smile. "Just thinking about the New Year's party your mom wants to throw." Sam groaned. I know. She can be a bit much." "A bit?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "Sam, she treats me like I'm her personal servant." "Come on, Em. She's just set in her ways. Give her time." I bit back a retort. This was an old argument, one I was tired of having. Instead, I changed the subject. "Sarah called yesterday. She wants us to come over for dinner next week." Sam's face lit up. "Great. It's been too long since we've seen her and Janet. I nodded, grateful for my sisters-in-law. They, at least, had welcomed me into the family with open arms. As Sam left for work, I found myself staring at my phone. Leo's number was still there, a temptation I couldn't quite bring myself to delete. I thought about the whirlwind romance with Sam, how quickly we'd gotten married after Leo left. Had it been too soon? Had I been running from my pain rather than towards love? The doorbell rang, startling me from my reverie. I opened it to find Carol, my mother-in-law, standing there with a forced smile. "Emily, dear, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." I stepped aside, letting her in. "Of course not, Carol. What can I do for you?" She breezed past me, her eyes critically scanning the living room. "Well, as you know, the New Year's party is coming up. I'll need you to handle all the preparations. Food, decorations, everything. Oh, and we'll be hosting it here, of course." I felt my jaw drop. "Here? Carol, I don't think." "Nonsense, dear. It's time you started pulling your weight in this family. Now I've made a list." As Carol droned on, my phone buzzed. A text from Leo. "Can we talk?" I stared at it, my heart pounding. Suddenly, the walls of my carefully constructed new life felt like they were closing in on me. What had I gotten myself into? I stared at the mountain of laundry before me, sighing heavily. This wasn't exactly how I'd envisioned my life when I'd agreed to become a housewife. The doorbell rang, a welcome interruption from my domestic drudgery. "Emily!" Sarah exclaimed, enveloping me in a warm hug as I opened the door. "I brought reinforcements," she added, gesturing to Janet, who stood behind her, arms laden with grocery bags. "What's all this?" I asked, ushering them inside. Janet grinned. "We're staging an intervention. Sam mentioned you've been down lately, so we're here to cheer you up." As we bustled around the kitchen, preparing lunch, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Sarah and Janet had been my saving grace since I married into the family, a stark contrast to Carol's constant criticism. "So," Sarah said, chopping vegetables, "spill. What's really going on?" I hesitated, then the words tumbled out. "I'm not sure I made the right choice, becoming a housewife. And Carol, she's impossible. Nothing I do is ever good enough." Janet squeezed my hand. "Oh, honey, have you talked to Sam about this?" I shook my head. "He doesn't see it, or doesn't want to." "Men," Sarah rolled her eyes. "Sometimes they need things spelled out for them." As we sat down to eat, my phone buzzed. Another text from Leo. "Please, Em, we need to talk." "Everything okay?" Janet asked, noticing my frown. I quickly put the phone away. "Fine, just spam." After lunch, as Sarah and Janet were leaving, Sarah pulled me aside. "Listen, Em, if you ever need a break, I know a place that's hiring. Part-time, flexible hours. Might be good for you to get out of the house." I hugged her tightly. "Thanks, I'll think about it." That evening, as Sam and I sat down for dinner, I decided to broach the subject. "Sam, I've been thinking maybe I should get a part-time job." He looked up, surprised. "But I thought you wanted to be a housewife." "I did. I thought I did, but I'm feeling a bit lost." Sam reached across the table, taking my hand. "Em, I want you to be happy. If working will make you happy, then do it." I felt a surge of affection for him, remembering why I'd fallen for him in the first place. But then his phone buzzed, and he quickly flipped it over, a flicker of something, guilt, crossing his face. "Everything okay?" I asked, suspicion gnawing at me. "Fine," he said too quickly. "Just work stuff." Later that night, as Sam slept, I found myself staring at my phone again. Before I could talk myself out of it, I typed out a response to Leo. "Okay, let's talk." The next morning, I woke to find Sam already gone, a note on his pillow. "Early meeting. See you tonight. Love you." I tried to shake off my unease as I went about my day, but as I was folding laundry, Sam's phone, forgotten on the nightstand, buzzed. Against my better judgment, I looked. A text from someone named A. "Can't wait to see you later, babe. Same place?" My world tilted on its axis. Surely there was an explanation. There had to be. The doorbell rang, startling me. I stumbled downstairs, my mind reeling. When I opened the door, I froze. Leo stood there, looking exactly as he had the day he'd walked out of my life. "Em," he said softly. "Thank you for agreeing to talk." I stared at him, my emotions a tangled mess. Behind me, Sam's phone buzzed again. In that moment, standing on the precipice between my past and my uncertain future, I made a decision. "Come in, Leo," I said, stepping aside. "We have a lot to talk about." As I closed the door behind him, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was closing the door on one chapter of my life and opening another. What lay ahead, I didn't know, but I was determined to find out. The moment Leo stepped into my living room, a flood of memories washed over me. 12 years of shared history hung in the air between us, thick and palpable. "You look good, Em," Leo said, his eyes roaming my face. I crossed my arms, suddenly feeling exposed. "Why are you here, Leo?" He took a deep breath. "I made a mistake. Leaving you. It was the biggest regret of my life." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Carol's name flashed on the screen. I groaned internally, but answered. "Emily, dear," Carol's saccharine voice dripped through the speaker. "We're having a last-minute New Year's celebration. I expect you and Sam to be here." "Carol, it's rather short notice." "Nonsense. Family comes first. We'll see you tomorrow evening." She hung up before I could protest further. I turned back to Leo, who was watching me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Everything okay?" he asked. I sighed. "Just my mother-in-law. She's challenging." Leo nodded sympathetically. "Want to talk about it?" For a moment, I was tempted. It would be so easy to fall back into our old patterns, to let Leo be my confidant again. But then I remembered the text on Sam's phone, and reality came crashing back. "I think you should go," I said firmly. Whatever this is, it's not a good idea." Leo looked like he wanted to argue, but then nodded. "I understand. But Em, I'm not giving up. We had something special, and I think we could have it again." As I closed the door behind him, my mind was reeling. Between Leo's reappearance, Sam's suspicious text, and now Carol's demands, I felt like I was being pulled in 1,000 different directions. The next evening, Sam and I arrived at Carol and Roger's house. The tension between us was palpable. I still hadn't confronted him about the text, and guilt gnawed at me for meeting Leo. "Emily, Sam!" Carol greeted us effusively, air kissing our cheeks. Come in. Emily, be a dear and help me in the kitchen." I shot a pleading look at Sam, but he was already being whisked away by his father. Resigned, I followed Carol into the kitchen. "Now," she said, thrusting a pile of dishes at me, "I need these washed and dried. Then you can start on the hors d'oeuvres." "Carol," I started, trying to keep my voice level. "I thought this was supposed to be a family gathering. Why am I the only one working?" She waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. This is what families do. We all pitch in." As I scrubbed dishes, my resentment bubbled. Through the kitchen door, I could see Sam laughing with his sisters, drink in hand. The unfairness of it all made my blood boil. Suddenly my phone buzzed. A text from Leo. "Thinking of you. Hope everything's okay." I quickly deleted it, but not before Carol's sharp eyes caught the movement. "Who's that?" she asked, her voice dripping with suspicion. "No one," I said quickly. Too quickly. Carol's eyes narrowed. "Emily, I hope you're not doing anything to jeopardize your marriage to my son. After all, he's been so good to you, taking you in after that nasty breakup." Her words hit me like a slap. Before I could respond, Sam walked in. "Everything okay in here?" he asked, looking between us. I opened my mouth, ready to unleash all my pent-up frustrations. But then I caught sight of Sarah and Janet watching from the doorway, concern etched on their faces. I swallowed hard. "Everything's fine," I lied, plastering on a smile. "Just finishing up in here." As I turned back to the sink, I caught a glimpse of Sam's phone lighting up. The name A flashed on the screen before he quickly pocketed it. In that moment, standing in Carol's kitchen, surrounded by a family that didn't feel like mine, I made a decision. Something had to change, and it had to change now. The question was, did I have the courage to make that change? The New Year's Eve party was in full swing, but I felt like I was suffocating. Carol had cornered me in the kitchen again, her voice grating on my last nerve. "Emily, dear, we're running low on hors d'oeuvres. Be a lamb and whip up another batch, would you?" I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white. "Carol, I've been cooking and cleaning all day. Maybe someone else could help?" She laughed, the sound brittle and false. "Oh, don't be silly. This is what a good wife does. You do want to be a good wife, don't you?" Before I could respond, she dropped the bomb. "Oh, and by the way, I'll need you to cover the expenses for tonight's party. It's the least you can do, considering how much we've done for you." My jaw dropped. "Excuse me, Carol, that's not fair. We never agreed." Now, she cut me off, patting my cheek condescendingly. "Family helps family. You are part of this family now, aren't you?" I stood there, stunned, as she sauntered back to the party. Through the kitchen door, I could see Sam laughing with his college friends, oblivious to my distress. My phone buzzed in my pocket, another text from Leo. I ignored it. Taking a deep breath, I made my decision. I marched into the living room, my heart pounding. "Sam," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "can I talk to you for a moment, privately?" He looked up, surprised. "Can't it wait, Em? We're in the middle of a game." "No," I said firmly, "it can't." Reluctantly, he followed me to the study. As soon as the door closed behind us, I let loose. "Your mother expects me to pay for this entire party. Did you know about this?" Sam's eyes widened. "What? No, of course not. She wouldn't." "She did," I cut him off. "And that's not all. I'm tired, Sam. Tired of being treated like a servant in my own family. Tired of your mother's constant criticism and demands. And I'm tired of you not standing up for me." Sam ran a hand through his hair, looking flustered. "Em, come on. You know how Mom is. She doesn't mean any harm." "Doesn't she?" I challenged. "And what about you? Who's A, Sam?" His face paled. "What?" "I saw the text," I said, my voice breaking. "Are you cheating on me?" "Emily, it's not what you think," but I'd heard enough. I held up a hand, silencing him. "I can't do this anymore, Sam. I won't." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out of the study. I could hear Sam calling after me, but I didn't stop. I marched straight to Carol, who was holding court in the center of the room. "Carol," I said loudly, drawing everyone's attention, "I will not be paying for this party. In fact, I won't be staying for it either." Her face contorted with rage. "How dare you?" "No," I cut her off. "How dare you? You've treated me like dirt from the moment I married your son." "Well, I'm done. I deserve better than this." The room had gone silent. I could feel all eyes on me, but for once I didn't care. I turned to Sarah and Janet, who were watching with a mixture of shock and, was that pride? "Thank you both for your kindness," I said softly. "You've been the only bright spots in this family for me." With that, I walked out, ignoring the chaos erupting behind me. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. My phone buzzed again. Leo. This time I answered. "Leo? Can we meet? I think I'm ready to talk." As I drove away from the house, leaving the sounds of the party behind, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking control of my own life. And that felt pretty damn good. The clock struck midnight, as I sat alone in my darkened living room, the faint sounds of fireworks in the distance, a stark contrast to the silence enveloping me. I'd driven aimlessly for hours after leaving the party, eventually ending up back home, unable to face Leo or anyone else. My phone had been buzzing incessantly, calls and texts from Sam, Sarah, Janet, even Carol. I ignored them all. As the first light of the new year crept through the windows, I finally mustered the courage to listen to the voicemails. Sam's voice, pleading and desperate. "Em, please come home. We need to talk. I can explain everything." Sarah, concern evident in her tone. "Emily, we're worried sick. Please call us." And then, unexpectedly, "Em, I know things are complicated. I'm here if you need me." I deleted them all, a strange numbness settling over me. The events of the past few days played on a loop in my mind, the suspicions, the confrontations, the humiliation. How had I let things get to this point? As morning fully broke, I made a decision. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I showered, dressed, and drove to Sam's office. It was New Year's Day, but I knew he'd be there, burying himself in work to avoid dealing with personal issues, a habit I'd come to resent over our short marriage. The office was quiet as I made my way to Sam's corner suite. I could hear muffled voices as I approached. Without knocking, I pushed the door open. The scene before me felt like a punch to the gut. Sam was there, all right, with a young woman perched on his desk, her hand on his chest. They sprang apart as I entered, guilt written all over their faces. "Emily!" Sam exclaimed, his face pale. "What are you doing here?" I stood frozen, my eyes locked on the woman. She couldn't have been more than 25, with long blonde hair and a face full of expertly applied makeup. This must be E.A. "So," I said, my voice eerily calm, "this is why you've been so busy at work lately." The woman slid off the desk, smoothing her skirt. "I should go," she mumbled, avoiding my gaze as she hurried past me. Sam ran a hand through his hair, his expression a mix of shame and defiance. "Em, I can explain. Save it, I cut him off. How long? He sighed, slumping into his chair. 3 months. The admission hit me like a physical blow. 3 months, half of our marriage. Why? I whispered, hating the tremor in my voice. Sam looked at me, his eyes pleading. I don't know, Em. Things between us, they've been so strained with my mother and your unhappiness. I guess I just wanted to feel appreciated again. A bitter laugh escaped me. Appreciated? You want to talk about appreciation? I've bent over backwards trying to fit into your family, to be the perfect wife. And this is how you show your appreciation? I'm sorry, he said, reaching for me. I stepped back, out of his reach. I want a divorce, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Sam's face crumpled. Emily, please. We can work this out. I'll end things with Amanda. I'll stand up to my mother. Just give me another chance. I shook my head, a strange calm settling over me. No, Sam, it's too late for that. As I turned to leave, Sam called out, What about Leo? I know he's been texting you. I paused at the door, looking back at him. Nothing's happened with Leo, but even if it had, it wouldn't change this. We're done, Sam. Walking out of that office, I felt a mix of emotions, grief, anger, but also an unexpected sense of liberation. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Em, Janet and I are here for you, whatever you need. In that moment, I made a decision. I was done being a victim, done letting others dictate my life. It was time to take control, to stand up for myself. And if that meant burning a few bridges along the way, so be it. I started the car, a plan already forming in my mind. Carol, Sam, and anyone else who had underestimated me were about to learn a hard lesson. The old Emily was gone. The new Emily? She was ready for revenge. I sat in Sarah's living room, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea, as she and Janet paced furiously before me. The events of the past few days had left me drained, but their righteous anger on my behalf was oddly comforting. I can't believe Sam would do this to you, Janet fumed, her usually calm demeanor shattered. And Mom? She's gone too far this time. Sarah nodded vigorously. We're going to confront them, Emily. All of them. They can't treat you like this and get away with it. I took a sip of tea, considering their words. Part of me wanted to let them fight this battle for me, to retreat into the background and lick my wounds. But I knew this was my fight. I appreciate your support, I said slowly, but I need to handle this myself. They exchanged worried glances. Are you sure? Sarah asked gently. You don't have to face them alone. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Sam. Again. This time I answered. Emily, please, his voice was desperate. Can we talk? Mom wants to apologize. We all do. I closed my eyes, steeling myself. Fine. I'll be there in an hour. As I hung up, Janet placed a hand on my shoulder. We're coming with you. An hour later, we walked into Carol and Roger's living room. And the tension was palpable. Sam sat on the couch, looking haggard. Carol stood by the fireplace, her usual haughty expression replaced by one of forced contrition. Roger hovered in the background, clearly uncomfortable. Emily, Carol began, her voice syrupy sweet. We owe you an apology. Our behavior at the New Year's party was unacceptable. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for more. Sam jumped in. Em, I'm so sorry for everything. The party, the affair. I want to make this right. I looked between them, their faces a mixture of guilt and hope. For a moment I almost believed them. Almost. Is that all? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Carol blinked, thrown off balance. Well, yes. We hope you can forgive us and we can move past this unpleasantness. A bitter laugh escaped me. Unpleasantness? Is that what you call years of manipulation, criticism, and disrespect? Is that what you call cheating on your wife? Sam stood, reaching for me. Emily, please. I stepped back, my voice rising. No, Sam, you don't get to touch me. Not after I saw you with her. Carol's eyes widened. You knew? About Amanda? The room fell silent. I turned to Carol, realization dawning. You knew about the affair? She had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a moment. Well, dear, these things happen in marriages. If you had been a better wife. That's enough. Sarah's voice cut through the room like a whip. How dare you blame Emily for Sam's infidelity? Janet joined in, her voice shaking with anger. You've gone too far, Mom. Both of you have. As Sarah and Janet tore into Carol and Sam, I stood there, a strange calm settling over me. This was it. The moment I'd been building towards. I cleared my throat, silencing the room. I want a divorce, I said, my voice steady, and I want you all out of my life. The chaos that erupted was deafening. Sam pleading, Carol shrieking, Sarah and Janet arguing in my defense. But I tuned it all out, focusing on the sense of liberation washing over me. As I turned to leave, Carol's voice cut through the noise. If you walk out that door, Emily, don't expect to ever be welcomed back into this family. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the scene of dysfunction before me. That, I said with a smile, is exactly what I'm counting on. With that, I walked out, leaving the shouting and drama behind. As I stepped into the cool evening air, my phone buzzed. A text from Leo. How did it go? Are you okay? I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. It's over, I typed back, and I've never been better. As I hit send, I realized this wasn't just the end of my marriage, it was the beginning of my revenge, and I was just getting started. The coffee shop bustled with the morning rush, but I barely noticed as I stared at the divorce papers before me. My lawyer had assured me they were fair, even generous. All I had to do was sign. My phone buzzed. A text from Leo. Thinking of you today. Stay strong. I smiled, warmth spreading through my chest. Leo had been a rock these past few weeks, a reminder of the person I used to be before Sam and his family had worn me down. As I reached for my pen, the bell above the door chimed. I looked up, my blood running cold. Sam walked in, Carol and Amanda in tow. Emily, Sam said, his voice strained, we need to talk. I stood, gathering my papers. We have nothing to talk about, Sam. The divorce papers. About that, Carol cut in, her smile sharp. We have a counterproposal. Amanda stepped forward, her hand on her stomach. I'm pregnant, she announced, her eyes gleaming with triumph. The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the table, steadying myself. Congratulations, I managed to say, my voice hollow. But I don't see how that changes anything. Sam at least had the decency to look ashamed. Em, please, we can work this out, for the baby's sake. I laughed, the sound brittle. Work what out, Sam? Your infidelity? Your mother's manipulation? Or how about the fact that you're here with your pregnant mistress, trying to guilt me into staying in a loveless marriage? Carol's eyes narrowed. Now, Emily, don't be dramatic. We're offering you a chance to save face, to be part of this family. Part of this family? I repeated, incredulous. You mean the family that treated me like a servant? That belittled and manipulated me at every turn? Sam reached for my hand. I snatched it away. Emily, please. I made a mistake, but we can start over, be a real family. I looked between them. Sam's pleading eyes, Carol's smug smile, Amanda's hand protectively over her stomach. In that moment, something inside me snapped. You know what? I'm done, I said, my voice steady. Done with your lies, your manipulation, all of it. I pulled out my phone, hitting record. So let me get this straight. You're here to blackmail me into staying in this marriage, using your unborn child as leverage? Sam's eyes widened. Emily, what are you doing? Getting evidence, I replied calmly. Now, Carol, you were saying something about saving face? Carol's composure cracked. You little... Careful, I warned. You're on record now. Amanda stepped forward, her face twisted with anger. You can't do this. That's my baby you're using as a pawn. I turned to her, my voice ice cold. No, sweetheart, that's what you're doing. The coffee shop had gone silent, all eyes on our little drama. I gathered my things, my hands steady. Here's what's going to happen, I said, looking each of them in the eye. I'm going to walk out of here and file these divorce papers. Sam, you're going to pay alimony, no contest. Carol, you're going to stay out of my life. And Amanda, congratulations on your baby. I hope it doesn't inherit its father's loyalty or its grandmother's heart. As I turned to leave, Sam grabbed my arm. Emily, please, don't do this. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. You know, Sam, I should thank you. You and Carol and this whole mess. You've reminded me of who I used to be, who I can be again. I shook off his hand and walked out, head held high. As the door swung shut behind me, I heard Carol's shrill voice. This isn't over, Emily. I smiled to myself. She was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt a surge of determination. The old Emily might have crumbled under their assault. But the new Emily? She was just getting started. My phone buzzed again. Leo, how did it go? I typed back, better than I could have imagined. Want to meet for lunch? I have a story to tell you. As I hit send, I realized that for the first time in years, I was looking forward to the future. And whatever came next, I was ready for it. I stood in Sarah's living room, my hands shaking as I pressed play on the recording. The room fell silent as my confrontation with Sam, Carol, and Amanda filled the air. Sarah and Janet's expressions morphed from shock to outrage as the scene unfolded. When it ended, Janet was the first to speak. "Those manipulative, lying? We need to confront them," Sarah cut in, her voice steel. "All of them." I took a deep breath. "No, I need to do this. Alone." They protested, but I stood firm. This was my battle to fight. An hour later, I walked into Carol and Roger's house. My head held high. The family was gathered in the living room, tension thick in the air. Sam's eyes widened when he saw me, a mix of hope and fear on his face. "Emily," Carol began, her voice sickly sweet, "I'm glad you've come to your senses." I held up a hand, silencing her. "I'm not here to reconcile. I'm here to end this once and for all." I pulled out my phone and played the recording. The color drained from Carol's face as her own voice filled the room, exposing her manipulation and Sam's infidelity for all to hear. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Roger was the first to break it, turning to Carol with disbelief etched on his face. "Is this true? Did you really try to blackmail our daughter-in-law?" Carol sputtered, her composure cracking. "Roger, Save it," he cut her off, his voice hard. He turned to me, his eyes filled with regret. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I nodded, acknowledging his apology. Then I turned to Sam, who looked like he might be sick. "Sam, here are the divorce papers. Sign them, and we can end this civilly." He hesitated, glancing at Carol. I saw the moment he made his decision, straightening his spine. "No," he said. "I won't sign." For a moment I felt my resolve waver. Then I remembered everything I'd been through, everything I'd endured. I smiled, and I saw Sam flinch at the steel in my eyes. "Fine," I said calmly. "Then I'll see you in court, where I'll play this recording for the judge." Sam's face paled. He reached for the papers with a shaking hand. As he signed, I turned to Amanda. "I truly am sorry you got caught up in this. I hope you find happiness, for your sake and your child's." She nodded, tears in her eyes. Finally, I faced Carol. "You've tormented me, belittled me, and tried to break me. But you've failed. I'm stronger now than I've ever been, and I have you to thank for that." Carol's mouth opened and closed, but for once she had nothing to say. I gathered the signed papers and headed for the door. As I reached it, Roger called out, "Emily, wait." I turned to see him handing Carol an envelope. "These are divorce papers," he said, his voice firm. "I won't be part of this toxicity any longer." As I walked out of that house for the last time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. It felt like a sign, an end, but also a new beginning. My phone buzzed. A text from Leo. "How did it go?" I smiled, feeling a flutter in my chest. "It's over," I replied. "Want to meet for dinner? I have a story to tell you." His response came quickly. "I'd love to. And Emily, I'm proud of you." Tears pricked my eyes as I read his words. I was proud of me too. 6 months later, I stood in front of a mirror, adjusting my blazer. My first day at my new job, thanks to Sarah's reference. As I grabbed my keys, my gaze fell on a framed photo. Me, Sarah, and Janet, laughing at a cafe. My new family, one built on love and respect. My phone buzzed. "Leo, good luck today? Dinner tonight to celebrate?" I smiled, warmth spreading through me. Leo and I were taking things slow, rediscovering each other and ourselves. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. As I stepped out into the morning sun, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead wasn't certain, but for the first time in years, I was excited to see where it would lead. I had faced my demons, stood up to my tormentors, and come out stronger on the other side. Emily, the doormat, the victim, was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth, who wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. And that woman? She was ready for whatever life had in store. The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my stupor. I stood frozen in the doorway of what used to be my kitchen, watching as Brenda, my mother-in-law, hurled another plate against the wall. "You useless, barren woman," she shrieked, her face contorted with rage. "Look what you've done to my son's life." I flinched as another plate whizzed past my ear. "Brenda, please," I pleaded, my voice barely above a whisper. "This is my home, too." She laughed, a harsh, grating sound that sent chills down my spine. "Your home? Not anymore, Laura. You've overstayed your welcome." I searched the room desperately for Mike, my husband of 15 years. He stood in the corner, his face a mask of indifference. "Mike," I called out, Please say something. He met my gaze, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I'd married. But then his eyes hardened, and he turned away. Maybe it's best if you leave for a while, Laura, he muttered. My world tilted on its axis. Leave? But where would I go? Brenda's triumphant cackle filled the air. Oh, I'm sure you'll figure something out. After all, you've been so good at figuring out how to avoid giving my son children. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my stomach. The same stomach that had just 3 years ago carried our child for 6 precious months before tragedy struck. That's not fair, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. You know that's not fair. But Brenda was on a roll now, circling me like a vulture. What's not fair is how you've held my son back all these years. This business could have been thriving if he hadn't been saddled with you. I turned to Mike, silently begging him to defend me, to remember all we'd been through together. But he remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. A knock at the door startled us all. Laura, a familiar voice called. Are you okay in there? Relief washed over me. Helen, I breathed, grateful for my friend's impeccable timing. Brenda's eyes narrowed. Don't you dare let that busybody in here, she hissed. But I was already moving, yanking open the door to reveal Helen's concerned face. Oh, thank God, I murmured, pulling her inside. Helen took in the scene, the broken dishes, Brenda's red face, Mike's hunched shoulders, and her expression hardened. What's going on here? Nothing that concerns you, Brenda snapped. This is a family matter. Helen's arm went protectively around my shoulders. Laura is my family, she said firmly. And from what I can see, she needs me right now. I leaned into her embrace, drawing strength from her presence. They want me to leave, I said, my voice cracking. Helen's grip tightened. Leave? This is your home, Laura. You and Mike built this life together. Built it on lies and disappointment, Brenda interjected. It's time for my son to start fresh. I looked at Mike, searching for any sign of the man I'd fallen in love with. Is that what you want? I asked softly. To start fresh without me? He finally met my gaze, and the coldness in his eyes made me shiver. I think it's for the best, he said, at least for now. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Helen's arm was the only thing keeping me upright. Then I'll go, I surprised by the steadiness in my voice. But don't think for a second that this is over. As Helen led me toward the door, I caught a glimpse of something on the kitchen counter, a stack of papers I hadn't noticed before. My heart clenched as I recognized the letterhead of a local law firm. Divorce papers. They'd already drawn up divorce papers. I stumbled, the final betrayal threatening to overwhelm me. But as I looked back at Mike and Brenda, standing in the wreckage of what was once my happy home, a new emotion surged through me. Determination. This wasn't the end of my story, it was just the beginning. I sat on Helen's floral-patterned couch, staring at the divorce papers spread across her coffee table. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, each word a dagger to my heart. I can't believe he did this behind my back, I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. 15 years of marriage, and this is how it ends? Helen squeezed my shoulder. You don't have to sign anything, Laura. We'll fight this. A knock at the door made us both jump. Helen frowned, checking her watch. Who could that be at this hour? She opened the door, revealing a familiar face that made my stomach churn. Ryan Davis, Mike's right-hand man at the grocery store, stood on the porch looking uncomfortable. Laura, he said, nodding at me. I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something you need to know. I steeled myself, gesturing for him to come in. What is it, Ryan? He perched on the edge of an armchair, wringing his hands. It's about the business and the divorce papers. My heart raced. What about them? Ryan took a deep breath. I overheard Brenda talking to Mike. She's been planning this for months, Laura. She convinced Mike to transfer most of the business assets to her name to protect them from the divorce settlement. The room spun. I gripped the arm of the couch to steady myself. That's not legal, is it? Helen, ever practical, was already reaching for her phone. We need to call a lawyer now. But Ryan wasn't finished. There's more. Brenda's been sabotaging the business, turning away loyal customers, mismanaging inventory. I think she's trying to run it into the ground. But why? I asked, bewildered. That business is Mike's whole life. Ryan's eyes met mine, filled with sympathy. I think she wants him completely dependent on her. If the business fails, he'll have nowhere else to turn. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just about getting rid of me. Brenda was orchestrating Mike's entire downfall, all to keep him under her control. I have to warn him, I said, standing up. Helen grabbed my arm. Laura, think about this. After everything he's done. I know, I cut her off. But I can't just let Brenda destroy everything we've built, even if Mike and I are over. The drive to Mike's house felt surreal. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw him through the kitchen window, hunched over paperwork. My heart ached at the familiar sight. I knocked on the door, steeling myself. When Mike opened it, his eyes widened in surprise. Laura, what are you doing here? I pushed past him into the house. We need to talk, Mike. It's about the business. He ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. Look, if this is about the divorce. It's not, I interrupted. Well, not entirely. Mike, Brenda's been... Don't start with that again, he snapped. My mother's been nothing but supportive. I laughed bitterly. Supportive? Is that what you call transferring business assets behind my back? Mike's face paled. How did you? It doesn't matter. What matters is that she's trying to ruin you, Mike. She's sabotaging the business, driving away customers. Can't you see what she's doing? For a moment I saw doubt flicker in his eyes, but then his expression hardened. You're just trying to turn me against her, he said coldly. I think you should leave, Laura. I stood my ground. Not until you listen to me. Check the books, Mike. Talk to Ryan. You'll see I'm telling the truth. Ryan? Mike's eyes narrowed. What does he have to do with this? Before I could answer, a car door slammed outside. We both turned to see Brenda marching up the driveway, her face twisted with rage. What is she doing here? Brenda shrieked, bursting through the door. Mike, I told you not to let her back in this house. As Brenda advanced on me, eyes blazing, I realized with startling clarity that this confrontation was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. I stood in the cramped bedroom of Helen's guest room, staring at the meager collection of belongings I'd managed to salvage from my former life. The divorce papers lay on the nightstand, a constant reminder of the battle ahead. A soft knock on the door jolted me from my thoughts. Laura? Helen's voice called. There's someone here to see you. Curious, I made my way to the living room, only to find Ryan standing awkwardly by the fireplace. His presence sent a mix of emotions through me, gratitude for his help, but also a painful reminder of the life I'd lost. Ryan, I said, forcing a smile, what brings you here? He shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Helen before meeting my eyes. I've got some news about the store. It's not good, Laura. My heart sank. What's happened? Ryan took a deep breath. Brenda's been making changes, big ones. She's fired 3 long-time employees, including old Mr. Jenkins. I gasped. Mr. Jenkins had been with the store since Mike's father owned it. She can't do that. She says she can, Ryan replied, his voice tight. And that's not all. She's canceling orders from local suppliers, trying to switch to cheaper, mass-produced stuff. The room spun. I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. But that'll destroy everything Mike's father built. The whole community relies on those connections. Helen sat beside me, her hand on my arm. Laura, maybe it's time to let this go? It's not your fight anymore. I shook my head vehemently. No, I can't. That store isn't just a business. It's the heart of this town. I won't let Brenda destroy it. Ryan cleared his throat. There's more. I overheard Brenda talking to her lawyer. She's trying to get Mike to sign over his remaining shares to her. If she succeeds, she'll have complete control, I finished, my voice barely above a whisper. The weight of the situation pressed down on me. I stood up, pacing the room. I need to do something. But what? Mike won't listen to me, and Brenda's got her claws in so deep. Helen's eyes lit up. What about the divorce papers? You haven't signed them yet, right? I nodded slowly, realization dawning. So technically, I'm still co-owner of the business. Ryan leaned forward, excitement in his voice. Exactly. You could challenge Brenda's decisions, maybe even stop the transfer of shares. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. I need a lawyer, I said, determination filling my voice. Helen was already reaching for her phone. I know just the person, tough as nails and hates bullies. She'll eat Brenda for breakfast. As Helen made the call, I turned to Ryan. Thank you for telling me all this. I know it can't be easy, caught in the middle like this. He shrugged, a small smile on his face. The store means a lot to me too, Laura. And, well, You've always been kind to me. Unlike some people," he added, his expression darkening. I was about to respond when Helen's excited voice cut through the room. "Laura, the lawyer can see you tomorrow morning. First thing." A surge of energy coursed through me. Perfect. Ryan, can you get me copies of the store's financial records? Anything that shows what Brenda's been doing? He nodded eagerly. I'll have them for you by tonight. As Ryan left, and Helen bustled about, making plans and muttering about, showing that what's what, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The pain of Mike's betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but now it was overshadowed by a fierce determination. I picked up the divorce papers, running my fingers over Mike's signature. For a moment, I saw us as we once were, young, in love, full of dreams for our future in the store. "I'm sorry, Mike," I whispered, "but I won't let her destroy everything we built, even if I have to fight you both to save it." With a deep breath, I set the papers down and turned to face Helen. "All right," I said, my voice steady, "let's get to work. We've got a battle to win." I stood outside Sherman's grocery, my heart pounding as I watched customers trickle out, their faces etched with disappointment. The store that had once been the pride of our town now looked shabby and neglected. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door, the familiar bell chime now sounding more like a death knell. Inside, the shelves were half empty, and what little produce remained looked wilted and sad. I caught sight of Ryan behind the counter, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Laura?" he said, relief evident in his voice. "Thank God you're here. It's been a nightmare." Before I could respond, a shrill voice cut through the air. "What is she doing here?" Brenda emerged from the back office, her eyes narrowing as she spotted me. "I thought I made it clear you're not welcome here anymore." I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. "I'm still co-owner of this business, Brenda, and from what I can see, it needs all the help it can get," she scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "We're doing just fine without your interference." "Are you?" I challenged, gesturing to the empty shelves. "Because it looks to me like you're running this place into the ground." Brenda's face flushed with anger, but before she could retort, the bell chimed again. We all turned to see Mrs. Hawkins, one of our oldest and most loyal customers, enter the store. "Oh, Laura, dear," she said, her face lighting up. "It's so good to see you. I was hoping you might be back." I smiled warmly at her. "It's good to see you too, Mrs. Hawkins. How can we help you today?" She hesitated, glancing around the store. "Well, I was hoping to get some of that lovely local honey you always stocked, and perhaps some fresh vegetables for my famous casserole." My heart sank as I realized we had neither. But before I could speak, Brenda jumped in. "I'm afraid we've had to make some changes to our inventory," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "But I'm sure we can find you some alternatives." Mrs. Hawkins frowned. "Alternatives? But I've been buying the same products here for years. My Herald, God rest his soul, always said Sherman's was the best store in the county because of its local touch." I saw an opportunity and seized it. "Mrs. Hawkins, I promise you we'll have your honey and fresh vegetables back in stock by next week. Won't we, Ryan?" Ryan nodded eagerly, ignoring Brenda's glare. "Absolutely. I'll make the calls myself." Mrs. Hawkins beamed. "Oh, wonderful. I'll be sure to tell everyone at the senior center. We've all been so worried about the changes here." As she left, promising to return, Brenda rounded on me. "How dare you?" she hissed. "You have no right to make promises about this store." "I have every right," I shot back, "and I won't stand by and watch you destroy everything Mike's family built." "Mike agrees with my decisions," Brenda sneered. "He knows what's best for the business." As if summoned by her words, the door opened again, and Mike walked in. He stopped short when he saw me, his face a mix of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. "Laura?" he said, his voice uncertain. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. "Mike, we need to talk about the store, about us, about everything." Brenda immediately latched onto his arm. "Mike, darling, you don't have to listen to her. Remember what we discussed?" But Mike's eyes were fixed on me, and for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of the man I'd married. "No, Mom," he said quietly. "I think it's time I heard what Laura has to say." The tension in the room was palpable as Mike, Brenda, and I faced each other. I knew that whatever I said next would determine not just the fate of the store, but the course of all our lives. Taking a deep breath, I began to speak, my voice steady and determined. Mike, there's something you need to know about what's really been happening here. The tension in the store was suffocating as I laid out everything I knew about Brenda's machinations. Mike's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally, a dawning horror as the truth sank in. That's impossible, he stammered, looking between Brenda and me. Mom, tell her she's wrong. Brenda's face was a mask of indignation. Of course she's wrong. This is nothing but a desperate attempt to save her own skin. But I wasn't backing down. Ryan, I called out, show Mike the books. Ryan hesitated for a moment, then nodded, pulling out a stack of papers from under the counter. I'm sorry, Mr. Sherman, but Laura's telling the truth. I've been keeping track of all the changes and, well, see for yourself. Mike's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. I could see the moment reality hit him. His shoulders sagged, and he looked years older in an instant. How could you do this? He whispered, turning to Brenda. This store was Dad's legacy. Brenda's mask slipped, revealing a flash of panic before she regained her composure. Everything I've done has been for your own good, Mike. You needed to learn to stand on your own 2 feet, away from her influence. My influence. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. I've been gone for weeks, and look what's happened. The store's falling apart, Mike, and it's not because of me. Before Mike could respond, the door burst open. A group of angry-looking customers stormed in, led by Mr. Jenkins, the employee Brenda had fired. Sherman, Mr. Jenkins bellowed, we want answers. Half the town's talking about how you've run this place into the ground. The situation was spiraling out of control. I watched as Mike, overwhelmed, stumbled back against the counter. I don't understand, he muttered. How did it get this bad? Seizing the moment, I stepped forward. Everyone, please. I know you're upset, and you have every right to be, but yelling won't solve anything. Give us a chance to make this right. Mr. Jenkins narrowed his eyes. And how do you plan to do that, Laura? Last I heard, you weren't even part of this business anymore. I took a deep breath, aware that my next words could change everything. I'm still co-owner of this store, and I promise you, starting today, things are going to change. Brenda's shrill laugh cut through the air. Co-owner? Not for long, dear. Once those divorce papers are signed. I'm not signing them, I interrupted, my voice steady. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. In fact, I'm going to fight this divorce with everything I have. This store, this community, it's my home, and I won't let it be destroyed. Mike's head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd fallen in love with, buried beneath years of his mother's manipulation. Laura, he said softly, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, I replied, but we need to act fast if we're going to save this business. Turning to the crowd, I continued, I'm asking for your trust and your patience. Give us 2 weeks. If we can't turn things around by then, well, I'll step aside for good. A murmur ran through the group. Finally, Mr. Jenkins spoke up. 2 weeks, Laura, not a day more. As the crowd dispersed, I felt a mix of relief and terror. What had I just committed to? Ryan approached, a tentative smile on his face. That was incredible, Laura, but how are we going to do this? I glanced at Mike, who was staring at the financial records with a lost expression, then at Brenda, whose face was twisted with barely contained rage. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I do know we can't do it alone. Ryan, start calling our old suppliers. See who we can win back. I'll reach out to Helen. We're going to need all the help we can get. As I turned to leave, Mike's voice stopped me. Laura, wait, I want to help, if you'll let me. I met his gaze, seeing a glimmer of the man I'd once known. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Okay, I nodded. Let's save our store. The past week had been a whirlwind of activity. Ryan and I had been working around the clock, reaching out to old suppliers, mending fences with disgruntled customers, and trying to breathe life back into Sherman's grocery. Mike had been helping too in his own hesitant way, but I could see the toll it was taking on him. I was restocking shelves when I heard the bell chime. Looking up, I saw Mike enter, his face etched with worry. Laura, he said, his voice tight. We need to talk. My heart sank. I'd been waiting for this moment, dreading it. Okay, I replied, setting down the can I was holding. What's on your mind? Mike ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I remembered all too well. It's about the business. The numbers. They're not adding up. I frowned. What do you mean? Ryan and I have been going over the books every night. That's just it, Mike said, his voice rising. I've been looking at them too, and there are discrepancies, large ones, and they all seem to lead back to you. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. What, Mike? That's impossible. I would never. Then explain this, he interrupted, pulling out a stack of papers. These transactions, all made in the weeks after you left. Thousands of dollars, Laura. Where did it go? I stared at the papers, my mind racing. I don't understand. I never made these transactions. Mike's eyes hardened. Don't lie to me, Laura. Not now. Was this your plan all along? To bleed the business dry before the divorce? The injustice of it all made my blood boil. How dare you, I hissed. After everything I've done to save this store, how can you even think that? Because the evidence is right here, Mike shouted, waving the papers. God, I was such a fool to trust you again. The store had gone silent, customers watching our confrontation with wide eyes. I could feel everything I'd worked for slipping away. Mike, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, think about this. Who else had access to the accounts? Who's been trying to sabotage this business from the start? I saw the moment of doubt flicker across his face, quickly replaced by anger. Don't you dare try to blame my mother for this. She's been nothing but supportive. Supportive? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call manipulating you into serving me divorce papers behind my back? Mike froze. What are you talking about? With shaking hands, I reached into my bag and pulled out the divorce papers I'd been carrying with me. These, Mike, the ones your mother had drawn up weeks ago without my knowledge, the ones you signed. The color drained from Mike's face as he stared at the papers. I never signed these. What? Laura, I swear, I never signed these papers. I didn't even know they existed. The realization hit us both at the same time. Brenda, we said in unison. Just then, the store's phone rang. Ryan answered it, his face growing pale as he listened. Mike, he said, holding out the receiver. It's the bank. They say there's been a large withdrawal from the business account. They need your authorization immediately. Mike lunged for the phone, but I grabbed his arm. Wait, I said urgently. Think about it. Who else has access to that account? Understanding dawned in Mike's eyes, followed quickly by horror. Without another word, he bolted for the door, leaving me standing amidst the chaos of the store. My mind was reeling. Brenda had gone further than we'd ever imagined, forging signatures, embezzling money. But why? What was her endgame? As I watched Mike's retreating figure, I knew we were hurtling towards a confrontation that would change everything. The store, our marriage, our entire lives hung in the balance. Taking a deep breath, I turned to Ryan. Call Helen, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Tell her to meet us at Mike's house. It's time to end this once and for all. My heart pounded as I raced towards Mike's house, Helen and Ryan close behind. The evening sky was darkening, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. As we pulled up, I saw Mike's car in the driveway, alongside Brenda's sleek sedan. They're both here, I said, my voice tight with tension. Helen squeezed my shoulder. We're right behind you, Laura. Whatever happens, we've got your back. Taking a deep breath, I marched up to the front door and threw it open without knocking. The sound of raised voices led us to the living room, where we found Mike and Brenda locked in a heated argument. How could you do this? Mike was shouting, his face red with anger. Your own son. Brenda's eyes widened as she saw us enter. What are they doing here? She hissed. This is a family matter. We are family, I retorted, stepping forward, and it's time for the truth, Brenda. All of it. Mike turned to me, his eyes wild with a mix of emotions. Laura, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. The things she's done. Brenda's composure cracked. I did it all for you, Mike, to protect you from her. She jabbed a finger in my direction. She was going to ruin everything, just like she ruined your chance at having children. The room fell silent. I felt as if I'd been slapped. Is that what this is about? I whispered. Our miscarriage? Mike's face crumpled. Mom, how could you? That wasn't Laura's fault. It was no one's fault. But Brenda was beyond reason now. She took everything from you. Your future, your legacy. I had to do something. So you decided to destroy the business? Ryan interjected, his voice thick with disbelief. How does that help anyone? Brenda's laugh was borderline hysterical. The business? That was just the beginning. Once it was gone, Mike would have nothing left. He'd have to start over with me by his side. the way it should be. The realization of Brenda's plan hit me like a tidal wave. She hadn't just been trying to get rid of me, she'd been systematically dismantling Mike's entire life, all to keep him dependent on her. Mike staggered back as if physically struck. "My God," he murmured, "all these years, everything you've done." I stepped forward, placing myself between Mike and Brenda. "It's over, Brenda. We have proof of everything. The forged signatures, the embezzlement. You can't talk your way out of this." For a moment, I thought she might lunge at me, but then something in her seemed to deflate. "You'll never understand," she spat. "A real mother would do anything for her child." "No," Mike said, his voice stronger now. "A real mother wouldn't destroy her child's life for her own selfish needs." Brenda's face contorted with rage. "Selfish? I gave up everything for you, and this is how you repay me?" She turned to me, eyes blazing. "This is all your fault. You turned him against me." Before I could react, Brenda lunged forward, her hands outstretched as if to claw at my face. I stumbled backward, but Mike was faster. He stepped between us, catching his mother's wrists. "That's enough," he roared. The authority in his voice seemed to shock even Brenda into silence. "You're going to leave now, Mom, and you're never coming back." As Ryan and Helen moved to escort Brenda out, I watched the woman who had caused so much pain and destruction crumble before my eyes. For a moment, I almost felt pity for her. The slamming of the front door echoed through the house, leaving Mike and me alone in the sudden silence. We stood there, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on us. Finally, Mike turned to me, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Laura," he whispered, "I don't know if I can ever make this right, but I want to try, if you'll let me." I stared at him, my emotions a whirlwind of anger, hurt, and a tiny flicker of hope. As I opened my mouth to respond, I realized that this moment would define not just our future, but who I was going to be from this point forward. The choice was mine, and mine alone. 6 months had passed since that fateful night when Brenda's web of lies unraveled. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my blazer, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at me. Today was my first day as a social worker, a path I never imagined I'd take. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Helen beaming at me. "Ready for your big day?" she asked, pulling me into a hug. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, my stomach fluttering with nerves and excitement. As we drove to the community center, Helen filled me in on the latest town gossip. "Did you hear about Brenda?" she asked hesitantly. I tensed. "What about her?" "She's moved to Florida. Apparently she's not speaking to anyone from town anymore." I nodded, a mix of emotions washing over me. Brenda's actions had caused so much pain, but in a way they'd also set me free. "And Mike?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Helen's expression softened. "He's still trying to salvage the store. Ryan's been a big help." We pulled up to the community center, and I took a deep breath. "This is it," I said, more to myself than Helen. "You're going to be amazing," Helen assured me. "Those people in there need someone like you, someone who understands what it's like to overcome adversity." As I walked into the building, my mind drifted back to the night everything changed. Mike's plea for a second chance had hung in the air between us, heavy with years of hurt and betrayal. In that moment, I'd made a choice, not just about our marriage, but about the woman I wanted to be. "I can't go back, Mike," I'd told him, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. "But maybe we can both move forward." The next few months had been a whirlwind of change. Mike and I had decided to separate, but amicably. We worked together to save the store, rebuilding trust not as husband and wife, but as business partners. And in the process, I'd discovered a strength in myself I never knew existed. Now, as I stood in front of my first group of clients, women who'd faced their own battles with manipulative relationships and shattered dreams, I felt a sense of purpose I'd never experienced before. "Welcome, everyone," I began, my voice stronger than I expected. "My name is Laura, and I'm here to help you navigate the challenges you're facing. But more than that, I'm here to remind you of the strength you have within yourselves." As I shared my story, the manipulation, the betrayal, the journey to self-discovery, I saw recognition in their eyes. These women understood, in a way no one else could, the courage it took to reclaim your life. "It's not easy," I told them, "but you are not alone, and you are so much stronger than you know." After the session, As I gathered my things, I noticed a familiar figure hovering in the doorway. Mike stood there looking uncertain. "Laura," he said softly, "I hope it's okay that I came. I wanted to see you in action." I felt a flutter in my chest, but it wasn't the ache of lost love. It was pride in myself, in how far I'd come. "Thank you for coming, Mike," I said sincerely. He smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "You're amazing, you know that? These women are lucky to have you." As we walked out together in comfortable silence between us, I realized something profound. The revenge I'd once craved against Brenda, against Mike, even against life itself for the hardships I'd faced, it had transformed into something far more powerful. I'd found my purpose, my strength, my voice. Standing in the warm afternoon sun, I turned to Mike. "I forgive you," I said, the words lifting a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying, "and I forgive myself too." Mike's eyes widened in surprise, then filled with understanding. "Thank you," he whispered. As we parted ways, Mike to the store, me to meet Helen for a celebratory dinner, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and heartache, but it had led me here, to this moment, to this version of myself. I was Laura Collins, survivor, social worker, and architect of my own happiness, and my story was far from over. I smoothed my dress for the 100th time, taking a deep breath as Ben's hand squeezed mine reassuringly. The imposing oak door loomed before us, a barrier between me and my future in-laws. This was it, the moment of truth. "Ready, sweetheart?" Ben's warm smile melted away some of my anxiety. I nodded, mustering a confident grin. "As I'll ever be." The door swung open, revealing a tall, distinguished man with Ben's kind eyes. "There you are," he exclaimed, pulling Ben into a bear hug. "And you must be Nora. Welcome, my dear." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," I said, accepting his firm handshake. "Please call me Alan. Come in, come in. Patricia's been fussing all morning." We stepped into a pristine foyer that could have graced the pages of a home decor magazine. Everything was immaculate, from the polished hardwood floors to the crystal chandelier overhead. "Benjamin!" A sharp voice cut through the air. I turned to see a woman descending the staircase, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her posture ramrod straight. This had to be Patricia. "Hello, Mother," Ben said, his voice tightening almost imperceptibly. Patricia's eyes swept over me, assessing. "So this is Nora." I extended my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Harrison." She barely touched my fingers before withdrawing. "Charmed, I'm sure. Well, don't just stand there. Let's move to the sitting room. I've prepared tea." As we followed her, I caught Ben's apologetic glance. I gave him a small smile, determined not to let his mother's chilly reception dampen my spirits. The sitting room was as immaculate as the foyer, with delicate china teacups already set out. We settled onto the plush sofas, the silence thick with unspoken expectations. "So, Nora," Patricia began, her voice syrupy sweet, "Ben tells us you're from, where was it again? Ohio?" "Indiana, actually," I corrected gently. "A small town outside of Indianapolis." "Ah, yes. How quaint." The way she said it made it sound like anything but. "And what is it you do, dear?" "I'm a pediatric nurse," I replied, my chin lifting slightly. "I've been working at Children's Hospital for the past 5 years. Patricia's eyebrows arched. "A nurse? How noble. Though I always thought Benjamin would end up with someone more ambitious. Perhaps a doctor?" "Mother," Ben warned, his jaw clenching. Alan cleared his throat. "I think it's wonderful, Nora. The world needs more caring people like you." I smiled gratefully at him. "Thank you, Alan." Yes, yes, very admirable." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Now, Benjamin, have you given any more thought to joining your father's firm? A man in your position should be thinking about his future, especially with a wife to support." Ben's hand found mine, squeezing gently. "Actually, Mother, Nora and I are quite happy with our current careers. We support each other equally." Patricia's lips pursed as if she'd tasted something sour. "I see. Well, I suppose times are changing. Speaking of change, did you hear about Sarah?" The sudden shift in topic caught me off guard. I'd heard Ben mention his older sister, but I hadn't met her yet. "What about Sarah?" Ben asked, wariness creeping into his voice. Patricia leaned forward, her eyes glittering with barely concealed glee. "Well, it seems that her marriage to Mark has finally fallen apart. I always said he wasn't good enough for her." Alan shifted uncomfortably. "Patricia, perhaps this isn't the time." "Nonsense, Alan. Families should know these things." She turned back to us. It's such a shame, but then again, Sarah always did make questionable choices. The undercurrent of malice in Patricia's voice sent a chill down my spine. I glanced at Ben, seeing the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers gripped his teacup a little too tightly. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "Is Sarah okay?" Patricia's gaze snapped to me, sharp and assessing. "Oh, I'm sure she'll manage. She always does, doesn't she, Benjamin? Though perhaps if she'd listened to me in the first place." As Patricia launched into what was clearly a well-rehearsed critique of her daughter's life choices, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped into a minefield. What exactly had happened between Sarah and Mark? And why did I have the sinking feeling that Patricia had played a larger role in their divorce than she was letting on? The cafe bustled with the midday lunch crowd, but I barely noticed the noise. My mind was still reeling from the previous day's encounter with Patricia. I stirred my latte absently, waiting for Sarah to arrive. A tall, slender woman with Ben's warm eyes rushed in, her blonde hair wind-swept. "Nora, I'm so sorry I'm late." I stood, smiling. "Sarah, it's great to finally meet you." We hugged, and I immediately felt a kinship with Ben's sister. As we settled into our seats, Sarah's expression turned apologetic. "I heard about yesterday. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that." I waved off her concern. "It wasn't your fault. But I have to admit, I'm curious about what happened with Mark. Your mother seemed almost gleeful about your divorce." Sarah's face darkened. "Of course she was. She orchestrated the whole thing." My jaw dropped. "What?" Sarah leaned in, lowering her voice. "Mom never approved of Mark. He wasn't from the right background, you see. She spent years trying to drive us apart." "That's terrible." I gasped. "What did she do?" "Little things at first, backhanded compliments, accidentally excluding him from family events, but then she started spreading rumors." Sarah's voice cracked. "She told our entire social circle that Mark was cheating on me." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Was he?" Sarah shook her head vehemently. "No, never. But the damage was done. Our friends, even some of Mark's colleagues, everyone looked at us differently. The constant suspicion, the whispers, it tore us apart." My mind raced, connecting the dots. "And yesterday, when she brought it up—" "She was gloating," Sarah finished bitterly, "and probably warning you." "Warning me?" I echoed, confused. Sarah reached across the table, gripping my hand. "Nora, you need to be careful. Mom sees you as an outsider, just like Mark. She'll try to push you out, too." My stomach churned. "But why? Ben and I love each other. We're happy." "That doesn't matter to her," Sarah said, shaking her head. "In her mind, Ben deserves someone from our world, old money, social connections. She won't stop until she gets her way." I straightened my spine, anger replacing my initial shock. "Well, she's in for a fight. I'm not going anywhere." Sarah smiled sadly. "I admire your spirit, but don't underestimate her. She's relentless." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ben. "Mom's insisting on hosting an engagement party next week. I tried to talk her out of it, but she won't budge. I'm so sorry, love." I showed Sarah the message, watching her face pale. "Oh, Nora, this is how it starts." "What do you mean?" "The engagement party? It's not for you. It's for her to parade Ben in front of all her society friends' daughters." Sarah's voice was grim. "She did the same thing to Mark and me." My head spun. "But surely Ben wouldn't." "Of course not," Sarah assured me quickly. "Ben adores you. But Mom will use every trick in the book to make you look bad and push you away." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Then I'll just have to be prepared." Sarah squeezed my hand. "I'll help you. We'll face her together." As we left the cafe, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Patricia herself. "Nora, dear, I do hope you have something suitable to wear for the engagement party. Perhaps we should go shopping? I know the most darling boutique." I stared at the message, my jaw clenching. The seemingly innocent offer was loaded with implications, that I wasn't good enough, that I needed her help to fit in. "What is it?" Sarah asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the text. "It's starting, isn't it?" Sarah nodded grimly. "Welcome to the battlefield, Nora. Are you ready?" I lifted my chin, a fire of determination burning in my chest. "Bring it on!" The bridal boutique was a sea of white lace and tulle, but I felt anything but serene. Patricia's voice grated on my nerves as she flitted from rack to rack, pulling out gowns that were more suited to her taste than mine. "Oh, Nora, darling," she cooed, holding up a monstrosity of ruffles and beads. This would be perfect for you. It'll hide all those problem areas. I gritted my teeth, forcing a smile. Thank you, Patricia, but I was thinking of something simpler. She skipped, shaking her head. But dear, this is your big day. You want to look like a princess, don't you? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ben. How's it going? Do you need a rescue? I smiled, typing back quickly. Not yet, but stay on standby. Nora? Patricia's sharp voice cut through my moment of relief. Who are you texting? It's rude to be on your phone when we're shopping for your wedding dress. I pocketed my phone, suppressing a sigh. Sorry, Patricia. It was just Ben checking in. Her eyes narrowed. Benjamin knows better than to interrupt important wedding preparations. I'll have to have a word with him about that. Alarm bells rang in my head. That's really not necessary. Nonsense, she waved me off. Now let's try on this lovely gown, shall we? An hour and several uncomfortable fittings later, I emerged from the dressing room in yet another dress I hated. Patricia clapped her hands in delight. Oh, it's perfect, she exclaimed. You almost look like you belong in our world. The backhanded compliment stung, but I held my tongue. Just then the boutique door chimed, and Sarah walked in, looking like a breath of fresh air. Sarah, I called out, relief flooding through me. What are you doing here? I thought you might need some backup, she said with a wink before turning to her mother. Hi, Mom. I hope you don't mind me crashing your shopping trip. Patricia's smile turned brittle. Sarah, dear, how unexpected. I thought you were busy with work today. I rearranged some things, Sarah said smoothly. She turned to me, her eyes widening in mock horror at the dress. Oh, Nora, that's not you at all, is it? I shook my head, grateful for the lifeline. Not really, no. Not. Sarah linked her arm through mine. Come on, let's find something that actually suits you. As we moved away from Patricia, I whispered, Thank you. I was about to lose my mind. Sarah squeezed my arm. I've been there. Don't let her bully you into something you don't want. We spent the next hour finding dresses that actually matched my style. Simple, elegant, and nothing like the overblown creations Patricia favored. When I finally stepped out in a sleek, off-the-shoulder gown, Sarah gasped. Nora, you look stunning, she said, her eyes misting over. I turned to the mirror, my breath catching. For the first time that day, I felt like a bride. Patricia's lips were pressed into a thin line. Well, it's different, but don't you think it's a bit plain for a Harrison wedding? I think it's perfect, a deep voice said from behind us. We all turned to see Ben standing in the doorway, his eyes locked on me with a look of pure adoration. Benjamin! Patricia sputtered. What are you doing here? It's bad luck to see the bride in her dress before the wedding. Ben ignored her, crossing the room to take my hands in his. You look beautiful, Nora. This is the one, isn't it? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Then this is the dress you'll wear, he said firmly before turning to face his mother. And Mom, I think it's time we had a talk about your behavior. This wedding is about Nora and me, not your social aspirations. Patricia's face flushed an angry red. Benjamin, how dare you speak to me like that? I'm only trying to help. No, Mom, Ben cut her off. You're trying to control, just like you always do, and it stops now. As Ben led Patricia away for a private conversation, I exchanged a look with Sarah. The battle lines had been drawn, and for the first time, I felt like we might actually win this war. The aroma of roasting chicken filled our apartment as I put the finishing touches on the table setting. This dinner party was my chance to show Patricia that I could be the perfect hostess, despite my quaint Midwest upbringing. Everything looks amazing, Nora, Ben said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. You've outdone yourself. I leaned into his embrace, savoring the moment of calm before the storm. I just hope your mother appreciates it. The doorbell rang, shattering our peace. Ben squeezed my hand reassuringly before going to answer it. Patricia swept in, her critical gaze taking in every detail of our home. Well, isn't this cozy, she said, her tone making it clear that cozy was not a compliment. Alan followed, offering me a warm smile and a bottle of wine. The place looks lovely, Nora. As we settled around the dining table, I could feel Patricia's eyes on me, watching my every move. I took a deep breath and began serving the meal I'd spent hours preparing. So, Nora, Patricia began, her voice syrupy sweet, tell me about your family's traditions. I'm sure they must be so interesting. I smiled, determined not to let her get under my skin. Well, we have a lot of wonderful traditions. Every summer we— Oh, how quaint, Patricia interrupted, not even trying to hide her condescension. I suppose that's what people do when they don't have access to more refined pastimes. Ben's fork clattered against his plate. Mother, that's enough. But Patricia was on a roll. I'm just trying to understand Nora's background, dear. After all, she'll need to learn how things are done in our circles if she's going to be a proper wife for you. My cheeks burned with a mix of anger and humiliation. I assure you, Patricia, I'm quite capable of adapting to new situations. Of course you are, dear. She patted my hand patronizingly. But there's so much you don't know. The social obligations, the charity galas, the proper way to address people of certain standing. It's a lot to learn for someone from your background. Mom, stop it, Ben growled, his patience clearly wearing thin. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I appreciate your concern, Patricia, but I'm confident in my ability to navigate any social situation. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Really? Then perhaps you can explain the proper way to address a duchess at a formal event, or which fork to use for the fish course at a state dinner. That's irrelevant, Ben interjected. Nora doesn't need to know any of that. Oh, but she does, Patricia insisted. That unless you plan on embarrassing the family at every turn. Something inside me snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Enough, Patricia. I may not know which fork to use for fish, but I do know how to treat people with kindness and respect, something you seem to have forgotten. The room fell silent. Alan looked uncomfortable, while Ben stared at me with a mix of surprise and pride. Patricia's face flushed an angry red. How dare you speak to me like that, Benjamin? Are you going to let her disrespect me in this way? To my shock, Ben stood up and came to stand beside me. Actually, Mother, I think Nora's right. Your behavior tonight has been appalling. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I was only trying to help. No, you weren't, Ben said firmly. You were trying to belittle and intimidate Nora, and I won't stand for it anymore. Alan finally spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. Patricia, I think it's time we left. As Ben showed his parents out, I sank back into my chair, my hands shaking. What had I done? I'd just confronted my future mother-in-law, potentially ruining any chance of a peaceful family dynamic. Ben returned, kneeling beside me. Nora, I'm so sorry. I should have put a stop to her behavior long ago. I looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but love and support. What do we do now, Ben? I don't think I can keep pretending everything's okay. He took my hands in his expression serious. We don't. It's time we set some boundaries with my parents, even if it means distancing ourselves from them. My heart raced at the implications of his words. Are you sure? That's a big step. Ben nodded, his jaw set with determination. I'm sure. You're my family now, Nora, and I won't let anyone, not even my mother, treat you this way. As we held each other, I realized we were at a crossroads. The decision we made now would shape our future and our relationship with Ben's family forever. But looking into Ben's eyes, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. The tension in the room was palpable as I sat between my parents and Ben, facing Patricia and Alan across the table. We'd decided to have a family dinner to discuss the wedding plans, but Patricia's behavior at our dinner party was still fresh in everyone's minds. My mother, usually the picture of Midwestern politeness, was uncharacteristically frosty towards Patricia. I must say, I was shocked to hear about your comments regarding Nora's background, she said, her voice tight. Patricia had the grace to look uncomfortable. I assure you, I meant no offense. I was merely concerned about Nora's ability to adapt to our way of life. Our way of life? My father's eyebrows shot up. And what exactly is wrong with the way we raised our daughter? Ben squeezed my hand under the table as I took a deep breath. Patricia, I understand you have concerns, but I assure you I'm more than capable of handling any social situation. Patricia's lips thinned. Oh, darling, you say that now, but you have no idea what you're getting into. The expectations, the scrutiny, it's not for the faint of heart. That's enough, Mother, Ben said, his voice sharp. Nora has shown nothing but grace and poise, despite your constant criticism. Alan cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the wedding plans. Have you two decided on a venue yet? I latched onto the change of subject gratefully. Actually, we were thinking of having it at my family's lake house in Indiana. It's beautiful in the summer and— Indiana, Patricia interrupted, aghast. But darling, what about the country club? All our friends and connections will be expecting an invitation. Ben's jaw clenched. This isn't about your friends, Mom. It's about what Nora and I want. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Benjamin, you need to think about your future. The connections you make at events like this can be crucial for your career. My career is doing just fine without using my wedding as a networking opportunity, Ben snapped. The tension in the room ratcheted up another notch. I could see my parents exchanging worried glances, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding before them. I think, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, that Ben and I need to make these decisions for ourselves. We appreciate your input, Patricia, but ultimately, this is our wedding. Patricia's face flushed an angry red. You ungrateful girl. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By turning our son against us? Mom, Ben shouted, standing up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. That's enough. I won't let you speak to Nora that way anymore. The room fell silent, everyone stunned by Ben's outburst. I reached for his hand, trying to calm him, but he was trembling with anger. Ben, Alan said softly, son, please sit down. Let's discuss this calmly. But Ben shook his head. No, Dad, I'm done discussing. I'm done trying to please you and Mom at the expense of my own happiness. He turned to me, his eyes softening. Nora, I think we need to have a private conversation. Confused and a little scared, I nodded and followed him out of the dining room and into the kitchen. Behind us, I could hear Patricia's indignant sputtering and my parents' attempts to smooth things over. Once we were alone, Ben took both my hands in his. Nora, I can't do this anymore. I can't watch my mother tear you down day after day. My heart raced. What are you saying, Ben? He took a deep breath. I think we need to consider cutting ties with my parents after the wedding, at least until they can learn to respect you, respect us. I gasped, the weight of his words hitting me like a ton of bricks. Ben, that's a huge decision. Are you sure? He nodded, his expression resolute. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You're my family now, Nora. You're my future, and I won't let anyone, not even my parents, jeopardize that. As I stared into Ben's determined eyes, I realized we were standing at a crossroads. The decision we made now would change everything. Our relationship with his family, our future, maybe even who we were as people. But as the sounds of argument drifted in from the dining room, I knew we had to make a choice. Okay, I whispered, squeezing his hands. If you're sure, then I'm with you. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Ben pulled me into a tight embrace, and as I buried my face in his chest, I wondered what storm we had just unleashed, and if we were truly ready to weather it. The cafe bustled around us, but Sarah and I might as well have been in our own little bubble. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking as she clutched her coffee mug. I can't believe Ben's really considering cutting ties with Mom and Dad, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. It's not an easy decision, Sarah, but after everything that's happened— She nodded, a bitter smile twisting her lips. Oh, I know. Believe me, I know better than anyone what Mom's capable of. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes darting around as if afraid Patricia might suddenly appear. Remember how I told you Mom never approved of Mark? I nodded, leaning in. Well, it was more than just disapproval. She orchestrated our entire divorce. My jaw dropped. What? How? Sarah's voice cracked as she spoke. She started spreading rumors. Told everyone that Mark was cheating on me with his secretary. It wasn't true, of course, but people believed her. Our friends, our colleagues, suddenly everyone was looking at us differently. I felt sick to my stomach. That's horrible, Sarah. I'm so sorry. She waved off my sympathy. It gets worse. She hired someone to Photoshop images of Mark with other women, sent them to me anonymously. I was devastated, confused. I confronted Mark, and he had no idea what I was talking about. By the time we figured out what was happening, the damage was done. Our trust was shattered. My mind reeled, trying to process the depths of Patricia's cruelty. But why would she do that? Sarah's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of pain and warning. Because Mark wasn't from the right background, because he threatened her idea of what our family should be. And Nora, she's planning to do the same thing to you. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? I overheard her on the phone, Sarah said, her voice urgent. She was talking to one of her society friends, saying how she was going to take care of the Nora problem, just like she did with Mark. She's planning something, Nora. Something big. My heart raced, panic rising in my throat. We have to tell Ben. We have to. Tell me what? We both jumped as Ben appeared at our table, his brow furrowed in concern. Sarah and I exchanged a look, and I knew we couldn't hide this from him. Taking a deep breath, I recounted everything Sarah had just told me. Ben's face grew darker with each word, his hands clenching into fists. When I finished, he was trembling with barely contained rage. "I'll kill her," he growled. "I'll fucking kill her." "Ben, no," I said, grabbing his arm. "We can't stoop to her level." "Then what do we do?" he demanded. "Just sit back and let her destroy our relationship like she did Sarah's?" Sarah spoke up, her voice stronger now. "We fight back, we expose her for who she really is." Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number containing a single image. My blood ran cold as I opened it. It was a photo of me, clearly doctored in an intimate embrace with a man who wasn't Ben. The accompanying message read, "Such a shame. I wonder what Ben will think when he sees this." My hands shook as I showed Ben and Sarah the message. Ben's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "That's it," he said, his voice deadly calm. "We're done. We're cutting them out completely." "Ben?" I started, but he cut me off. "No, Nora. This ends now. We're getting married in 2 weeks, and my parents won't be there. We'll start our new life without their toxic influence." As Ben pulled out his phone, presumably to call his parents, I exchanged a worried glance with Sarah. This was it, the point of no return. Whatever happened next would change all of our lives forever. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the storm that was about to break. We'd made our choice. Now we had to live with the consequences. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear, but the knot in my stomach had nothing to do with pre-wedding jitters. Ben and I had made our decision. His parents wouldn't be attending. The peace of the last 2 weeks had been hard-won. But now, as I stood in my childhood bedroom, staring at my reflection in my wedding gown, I couldn't shake the feeling that the other shoe was about to drop. Sarah burst into the room, her bridesmaid dress swishing around her legs. "Nora, you look beautiful." Her smile faltered as she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" I shook my head, forcing a smile. "Nothing, just nerves, I guess." Sarah squeezed my hand. "Hey, it's going to be okay. Ben loves you, and that's all that matters." Just then, my phone rang. The caller ID made my blood run cold. Patricia. Sarah's eyes widened. "You don't have to answer that." But I knew I did. With trembling fingers, I picked up the phone. "Hello? Nora, darling." Patricia's voice was syrupy sweet, a stark contrast to her usual clipped tones. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." I swallowed hard. "Patricia, it's my wedding day. What do you want?" "Oh, I know, dear. That's why I'm calling. Alan and well, we've been doing some thinking. We realize we may have been a bit harsh in our judgments." My heart raced. Was this really happening? I don't know what to say. "Say you'll tell us where the ceremony is being held. We'd like to be there to support you and Benjamin." For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, things could be different. But then I remembered the doctored photo, the cruel words, the pain in Sarah's eyes as she recounted her divorce. "I'm sorry, Patricia," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "But Ben and I have made our decision. The wedding is family only, and, well, you're not invited." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Now, you listen here, you ungrateful little—" I ended the call, my hands shaking. Sarah looked at me, her face a mixture of pride and concern. "You did the right thing, Nora." Before I could respond, there was a commotion downstairs. We rushed to the window to see Patricia's sleek black car pulling up in front of the house. "Oh no," Sarah whispered. She wouldn't. But we both knew she would. Patricia emerged from the car, Alan trailing behind her, looking uncomfortable. "We have to warn Ben," I said, panic rising in my throat. Sarah nodded, already typing furiously on her phone. "I'll tell him. You stay here. Don't let her see you in your dress." I paced the room, my heart pounding as I heard raised voices downstairs. My parents, Ben, Sarah, all trying to reason with Patricia. Suddenly, the door burst open. Patricia stood there, her face flushed with anger. How dare you exclude us from our own son's wedding? I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. Patricia, please, this is supposed to be a happy day. Happy? She spat. You've turned my son against me. You've ruined everything. No, Mom. Ben's voice came from behind her. He stepped into the room, his eyes locked on mine. You did that all on your own. Patricia whirled to face him. Benjamin, you can't be serious. This girl isn't right for you. She'll never fit into our world. Ben's jaw clenched. Then maybe it's time I found a new world, one that includes Nora and excludes your toxicity. Patricia's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered everything she'd done, everything she'd tried to do. Patricia, I said softly, I think it's time for you to leave. She looked at me, then at Ben, her eyes wild. This isn't over, she hissed. You'll see. You'll both see what a mistake you're making. As Alan gently led Patricia away, I sagged against Ben, the weight of everything finally hitting me. Are we doing the right thing? I whispered. Ben tilted my chin up, his eyes filled with love and determination. Absolutely. Now, what do you say we go get married? As we walked hand in hand towards our future, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. The war with Patricia might not be over, but today, love had won the battle. The shrill ring of my phone pierced the peaceful morning air of our honeymoon suite. Ben stirred beside me, but I quickly silenced it, recognizing the number. Patricia, again. For a moment I considered ignoring it, as I had for the past week, but something inside me snapped. Enough was enough. Hello, Patricia, I answered, my voice steady. Nora, darling, she cooed, her tone dripping with false sweetness. I hope I'm not interrupting your little getaway. I sat up straighter, steeling myself. What do you want, Patricia? Oh, I just thought we should chat woman to woman. You see, I've been thinking about our little misunderstanding. I almost laughed. Misunderstanding? Is that what you call trying to sabotage our relationship? Now, she'd skied. Let's not dwell on the past. I'm willing to let bygones be bygones if you are. All you need to do is convince Benjamin to reconcile with us. After all, family is everything, isn't it? The audacity of her request made my blood boil. Family? You tried to destroy your own daughter's marriage. You sent fake photos to break us up. That's not family, Patricia. That's manipulation. You ungrateful little, she started, but I cut her off. No, you listen to me now, I said, my voice low and firm. I've had enough of your games, your insults, your thinly veiled contempt for my quaint Midwestern background. Well, you never what? Never thought I'd stand up to you? Never imagined I might have a backbone? I took a deep breath, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. You know what, Patricia? I may be from the Midwest, but my family's company is one of the largest agricultural suppliers in the country. That little lake house where we got married? It's part of a 500-acre estate that's been in my family for generations. There was stunned silence on the other end of the line. But you know what? I continued. None of that matters. What matters is that Ben and I love each other. We support each other, and we don't need your approval or your toxic presence in our lives. You can't just cut us out, Patricia sputtered. We're his parents. You're right, you are his parents, but that doesn't give you the right to control his life or belittle his choices. Ben has made his decision, and I stand by him. If you ever want to be part of our lives again, you need to take a long, hard look at your behavior and make some serious changes. I could hear Patricia's ragged breathing on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her voice was small, almost broken. I don't know how. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. Start by apologizing. To Ben, to Sarah, to Mark. Seek therapy. Learn to respect boundaries. It won't be easy, but if you truly want to be part of our lives, that's what it will take. There was a long pause. I'll think about it, she finally said, before hanging up. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Ben stirred beside me, his eyes full of concern and love. Was that my mother? He asked softly. I nodded, recounting the conversation. When I finished, Ben pulled me into a tight embrace. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. You stood your ground, but you also left the door open. That's more than she deserves. I leaned into his warmth, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. Do you think she'll change? Ben sighed. I don't know, but what I do know is that we're stronger together. Whatever happens, we'll face it as a team. As we lay there, the morning sun streaming through the windows, I realized that this was the true happy ending. Not a fairy tale where all conflicts magically resolve, but a real, messy, beautiful life where we choose each other every day. Patricia might never change. She might never be the mother-in-law I'd hoped for. But that was okay, because I had Ben and Sarah and a whole new family that accepted and loved me for who I was. And in the end, that was all that mattered.